The chair shall call to order the Single Family Design Board for Monday, November 27th. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board on any item not on today's agenda? Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for approval of the minutes of our November 13th, 2017 meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
I make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, let's go through each item one at a time. 55 Chase Drive. Anyone have comments, corrections? Item number 2, 817 Maria Avenue. Item number 3, 945 Arboleda Road. Item number 4, 1224 Harbor Hills Drive. Item number 5 was postponed. Item number 6, 520 Stanley Drive. Item number 7 was postponed. And item number 8 was postponed. Okay, any further discussion to the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, so carried. Let's go to the consent calendar for November 20th. Or 22nd, excuse me, I'm reading.
The minutes for the SFDB consent agenda for November 22nd are as follows. Item A, 2146 Ridge Lane, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings. Item B, 811 Miramonte Drive, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings. Item C, 100 East Constance Avenue, received project design and final approval with the NPO findings. Item D, 1112 Manitou Road, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings.
Thank you. I have a motion for approval.
Make that motion.
And a second.
I second.
Any further discussion on the 22nd consent? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, so carried. Let's go to consent calendar for this morning, November 27th. Katie.
The minutes for the SFDB consent agenda for November 27th are as follows. Item A, 1440 Santa Rosa Avenue, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings and the following comments. To consider cleaning up the landscape between the wall and the street. And 3, the fence and wall height are consistent with the neighborhood and necessary for privacy. Item B, 302 East Calle Laureles, received approval of review after final as submitted. Item C, 1686 Las Canoas Road, received approval of review after final as submitted. Item D, 817 Maria Avenue, received final approval as submitted. Item E, 715 Westwood Drive, was continued 2 weeks with the comment to return with a preliminary landscape plan. Item F, 104 Santa Cruz Boulevard, received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings.
Do I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion to the minutes of the 27th? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, so carried. Okay, announcements. Mr. Cato is here.
Thank you, Chair Sweeney. Danny Cato, Senior Planner. I'm here because today on your agenda you have a minor zoning exception for an overheight hedge, I think it is. And as promised, I have folders for you. These aren't for you. These are for the board. I'm going to leave them with Katie. She'll pass them out before the item. These are the exact same thing that I passed out a couple of weeks ago when I was here for that trash enclosure. It has the finding on the first page, see-through cover, very nice. And then it's got the excerpts from the Good Neighbor Guidelines, and then performance standards, and then the the excerpts from the new zoning ordinance regarding the minor zoning exceptions and what they're allowed to be there for. So these will be for you. It is still my intention that when you have an item such as, a minor zoning exception on your agenda, that you'll get an email with this packet, just so you'll have them and you can kind of review them in advance. So that's still my intention. I don't think it happened this time, but it will happen.
Okay. I do have a procedural question, particularly because of this item this afternoon. This is a case of a one-item review. It's a single hedge of some sort. We don't know what it looks like yet, or et cetera. In theory, it's a bit different than our other work in that when we review a home or review a residence, we're usually looking at several things, windows and doors and additions and whatever, and we'll give it a concept design approval, and we'll give it a preliminary approval, and we do comments and so forth and so on. In this case, it looks like it's either an up or down vote.
Correct. It's
And-
simply an approval or denial or continuance of the minor zoning exception, and that's it. That decision is appealable to, in this case, City Council, but there's no preliminary design. It's just, is it approvable at the height that they request?
Okay, that's an up or down approval.
Yes.
Now, I know that some of us this weekend tried to generally go look at all of these sites, and I've got comments from a couple of my fellow board members that they couldn't figure out where this thing was, and so obviously we'll see tonight when it's brought to us.
Interior setback, which is really far from the street.
Right, because
Can't see.
anyway, it's complicated. So if the board chose, could we defer approval until we actually had a site review? Could we ask for a collective
Yes, absolutely.
site to go see whatever this thing looks like?
If the board members feel the majority of the board members feel they need that, then that's certainly
Okay, so
something
we're
you would
allowed to
ask
do
for.
that?
Yes,
Okay, but it basically, beyond that, it's just an up or down vote?
correct. Yeah. And I'm not sure what time it's on the agenda, but if you want me to come back and be here for it,
It's late. It's,
6.
where is it?
Last one. Thank
No, it's next to the last one, I think. Yeah, 6 o'clock.
So if you want me here, I can be here. I don't have to be. It's
What's
don't
the
think it's-
feeling of the board?
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, all right.
I don't know.
This is our first one. We'll see how it works.
okay. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. So Katie just asked me to remind you. You know, the way we used to do this before Enzo, and the way we still do it in Title 28, it's a staff level review, and the way we got the authority was that the neighbors had to consent. If the neighbors consented, they gave us a form saying we consent to the overhead hedge, then we as staff could give that approval. But now that it's become the purview of the design boards, it's a fully public noticed hearing, right? We notify neighbors within 300 feet. That neighbor consent is no longer required. We did that because there was no neighbor required when staff did that administrative approval. So if it comes up, there's no neighbor consent required anymore.
Okay,
Makes sense.
I think that makes sense. Everybody understand? So basically, the decision comes down to us. Yes or
Correct.
no?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, Katie, any other announcements?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask, as you may or may not know, 1625 Overlook Lane, the appeal for the project that we all went and did a site visit for a while back. It's been postponed a couple times, but it's scheduled for December 12th, and I need someone from the board to represent the project at the hearing. Is anyone available to do that?
And which site, which one is this?
1625 Overlook Lane.
Oh, Overlook, okay, yes, I'll be available if no one else is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
December what?
December 12th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay. Thank you. Will we see a staff report at some point before that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Is this an appeal that the neighbors are,
They're appealing, I
That's
believe,
correct.
The neighbors
the view corridor.
They're appealing the project design approval.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Katie?
No, Mr. Chair. That's
I
it.
do have one thing for you. As we close near the end of the year, I'm assuming in the next couple of meetings, we're going to get a calendar for next year?
For the dates of next
for
year?
next year's
Sure, I can
meetings,
get that
et cetera.
together for you.
And given the struggle we have of maintaining a quorum, although we hope we get an extra member by the first of the year, if you could, the sooner you could get that to us, the better.
Yeah, I'll get you the dates, and then as soon as we have any information on how many members we had, or how many applications we received, and whether anyone's been appointed, I'll let you know.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, let's go to item number 1. This is 315 La Marina Drive.
Mr. Chair, was there
Yes.
any subcommittee reports?
Oh, I'm sorry, are there subcommittee reports? And check, anybody?
Do not have any.
Okay, none that I know of. Okay, let's go to, oh, and a roll call, sorry. All this procedure stuff.
Don't answer yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Sweeney,
Here?
Board Member Miller,
Here.
Board Member James, Board Member Motisha,
Here?
Board Member Richards.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay, thank you. This is item number 1, 315 La Marina Drive. It was last reviewed on August 7th. The applicant is here to receive project design approval and final approval. If possible, project must comply with the staff hearing officer resolution number 064-17. Welcome. If you can introduce yourself, please.
Akiko Wade Davis, architect.
Jim Davis, architect.
Okay. Mr. Miller, do we have some comments from the 7th?
Yes, number 1, the proposed non-conforming garage is aesthetically appropriate and does not pose consistency issues with design guidelines or required findings. Number 2, the board expressed that the addition is modest and requested that the applicant return with a site section and show the adjacent neighboring properties. Number 3, the applicant is to study and provide alternate roof material options. Number 4, the proposed deck is in keeping with the project size, bulk, and scale. Action taken by James, seconded by Richard. Motion was carried.
Thank you. If you could share with us how you address those comments, please.
Sure. So there was a concern regarding the proposal for a metal roof on the structure. And what we did was we took photos of examples around the neighborhood. If I can get this map out here. The shaded property, this is our property here, and the other 4 properties are shown here in these photos to have metal roofs. This is 1216 Shoreline, 1222 Shoreline, this is right down the street, 222 La Marina, and 1266 San Miguel. And so this is similar, the standing seam style is what we are proposing for our project. These are in a darker color than we would propose. This is a similar tone in color, but instead of a beige color, we would be proposing a zinc gray. Here's the color sample that we'd be proposing. This is our color board showing the other colors we're proposing. So we would like the board to consider allowing us to proceed with our original intent.
Okay.
In terms of the site compatibility, we have some neighborhood photos to present. This is 315 La Marina. This is our project, so you can see the other houses adjacent. This is across the street, so you can see this is down the street. There are some 2-story structures, just maybe 5 houses down the street, showing that as an aspect of the neighborhood already. This is a view of the 222 La Marina, which has the metal roof, and the adjacent structures to that. And our project is right next to this big intersection here, which we're just showing in this photo. So it's kind of the start of this neighborhood. There's not a big connection with the neighborhood, towards Cliff Drive from here. So we're just showing that as context. We do have existing photos of the house, just to refresh everyone's memory. I think everyone was here except for you, Mr. Chair. This is the front of the house with existing plantings that we will be maintaining and modifying to work with the new layout. This is a view of the rear portion of the property. This is a view of the fence line along the south property line. It's very close to that fence line. Happy to go through the drawings again if wanted to show the proposed exterior lighting. We can look at the elevations to show the materials and how they would be applied. So, so this is the front, the proposed front elevation. So you'll see the metal standing seam. We've got board and batten, which would be in a pre-finished cedar siding. The horizontal siding elements that we have shown both on the second floor and on the gables and on the lower floor would be a painted white. Where did our color? Window sashes would be a dark aluminum clad for both the aluminum clad wood doors and the aluminum sliding doors. The trim and the horizontal siding, as mentioned before, would be this cream color, basically a white. The exterior wood shutters would be a dark charcoal gray for a contrast.
Great.
Okay.
We do have, and I also wanted to comment in terms of the floor plans, the second story balcony has been reduced slightly in size. We'll show. And this was a result of floor plan refinements as we went through. This balcony was reduced, this section of it, basically we added this portion of the second floor and pulled that balcony smaller by about 3.5 feet. So that did decrease in size from the original submittal that we did, that you first saw. Other than that, the floor plans have stayed the same. Let's see. We turn to the last page. You can see the exterior lighting that we're proposing. So this is the light fixture. We also have cut sheets for these. These are an LED fixture. The bulb is contained within this area here. This glass is basically just for show. These will be located as we have shown on this electrical plan. We do have 2 pendant fixtures, which would be the same fixture in a pendant version at the covered porch in the back. They'd be in the dark bronze color. Those 2 would be these, just for some pinpoints of light. Correct. So everywhere you see the wall sconce with the E is where we would be locating those. We have them on the upper floor as well, which would be the next page. So we just have 3 on the upper floor here, just adjacent to the doorways. And then in our set, we also have the required details and things that we would need for building permit submittal.
Okay, anything else to present?
No.
Okay. Okay, before we go to questions and comments, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Katie, did we have any written correspondence?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, the chair will then close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Why are you so attached to the standing metal racine roof?
We feel it's an upgrade from the asphalt shingle. And we know that the asphalt shingle is a common material that's used in the neighborhood, but we do feel that the metal standing seam, not only is it desired by our client, but we also feel that it would be a nice addition to the house.
Other questions?
Does a standing seam metal roof last longer than
Yes.
asphalt or tile or
They're also about a third to a half to a third more in cost.
more?
Yeah, no, it's a very expensive roof, having gone there.
Color. What's the color of this horizontal siding?
The horizontal siding is this white,
It's a white.
correct. And
Is
the
there some
board and, I'm sorry?
Is there some contrast to that? Look at the elevation.
Most of the board and batten siding is actually the cedar color, so the majority of the house is the cedar. And so where you see the horizontal siding
Horizontal
elements.
and vertical. Is that?
Vertical is cedar, horizontal is the white.
Put that's there like that.
Correct,
This is
Like
like
that.
that.
correct. The white would also be the trim around the windows.
And is it also fascia color?
Correct,
So basically, the house is really light except for the window trim.
Where is that?
correct,
So this color sits next to that color.
correct.
That's the roof.
That's the roof. They're soft, they're soft. And something more like one of the pictures you gave us?
That's similar. I think that's more of this tone, I'm guessing.
But
Of
it's-
course, I don't know.
It's going to be soft like that
It'll
rather
be
than,
soft like that. It's
rather than hard like this.
It's not dark like this.
Yeah.
That's more or less probably more of this tone. So this is the tone we're proposing. So it's somewhere maybe in between the two, but closer to that lighter shade. Yeah, we're not going for a sharp contrast with it.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm trying to see what's going on with the front walk. I see you're removing some impervious.
Sheet are you looking at?
Oh, I'm sorry, A1.1?
A1. Okay.
Yeah, there's a little bit of impervious paving coming out, and I'm wondering if the existing landscape will remain, and if you have a plan for the front.
We do not have a landscape plan for the front. Our intention is the current impervious surface that's being removed is actually the existing walkway from the driveway to the current front door. So the front door has been relocated, and so we're proposing to have stepping stones to lead up to that new covered porch there. The stepping stones would cut through the existing landscaping, and we would fill in where that impervious surface is being removed with the existing landscaping.
And the existing driveway is?
That is to remain, correct, and
that's
that's concrete.
And how about the water features in back? The
Yes,
koi pond?
we have a koi pond, which is shown with a bridge element that goes over, and by bridge, it's just a sandstone crossing, and a new spa located there with some flagstone, loose, just kind of sand set flagstone, and maintaining the existing lawn where it is.
Okay. Other questions?
Are you proposing new planting in the back as well?
We're proposing the new palms where those are shown. Other than that, there are, where we've got the green shown, those are existing screening elements or existing trees that would remain. So there's not a lot of area there. We would be retaining the landscape that's there currently, which is gone.
Okay. Other questions? I have a question on this fixture. One of the things we get concerned about is the privacy issue between properties. And in looking at your plan, this is the first lower level, first floor plan, and then where's that? You had a photograph down the side yard? Yeah. So in theory, those lights are going to be down this side of the house
Correct.
in some fashion.
Correct.
And that's the next door level. Does this have any ability to have that bulb covered in some way to keep the light from spotting over into this next door neighbor? The reason I'm asking is I've got exactly this condition on my house, and my next door neighbor has the same conditions. So when his light's on, I see that white spot. And I realize, you obviously have to have some of this because you're required by code to do that. I'm just concerned about that particular fixture on this level being a problem on that side of the house. I don't think it's a problem up here, but I think it is on that side. So is there another version of this?
Well, what might not be apparent is that this glass is simply the shade. The actual light source is hidden up within the metal portion of the light fixture. This is more of a decorative element. And so that was part of why we were looking at this fixture, because it doesn't have a direct point source that you can see when you see it from horizontal. You'd have to be looking, almost directly up at it.
Okay. And then the other question I had, because you're asking for final, and you appear to have what appears to be a full set. We'll look at that in a minute. What I wanted to see was your standing seam roof detail at the ridge.
So we would have a metal cap here that sits over the ribs that come
And
up.
so what's this distance? Do we know?
We don't have that. That's typically a standard piece that's supplied by the supplier, and we don't have
Okay,
this.
and the reason I'm asking is we had a standing seam roof that this board approved. It's the one I'm referring to that I wasn't allowed to sit in because it was too close to my house. Where that piece got really wide. Really wide.
Okay.
Just like, yeah, just one leg was like 12 inches and then 12 inches and then it down the ridge elements
Oh, wow.
on the hips. They're really big. And so that would be a concern I might have on allowing the standing seam roof to remain, just because that gets to be really shiny.
Absolutely. I think that would be a concern of ours as well.
See, this one has, these appear to be like 6 inches.
Right.
But yeah, the one roof that we looked at and it was approved got to be really big.
Those appear to be 6 inches.
So let's see, let's do this. If that's 6 inches, and these I'm assuming off of some catalog,
Right.
that's 6
That's
inches.
6 inches.
Okay, so,
And I think our intention would be to have those be as small as they would need to be in terms of waterproofing effectiveness.
okay, and then the final detail I wanted to see was you have these wooden awnings. Do you have that detailed somewhere?
Oh, those are Bermuda shutters. We don't have them completely detailed. What we are showing is how they would be hinged on the actual trim itself. And this is just showing a dashed line because not all the windows have shutters.
Right.
So this line, this would be part of the window or shutter sash.
So what is that material right there? Is
That's
that a
going to be
metal-
painted wood.
That's painted wood? okay.
Correct.
And so there's a hinge element that's some kind of metal component of some sort?
Correct. So those are basically the same as a standard wood louvered shutter,
Okay.
but instead of being hinged at the sides, it's hinged
Show
at
me
the
where they are
top.
on the,
So that's what I was looking at. So there's a couple up here.
Correct.
That's in the back.
And along the front elevation as well,
And there's a couple in the front,
and then along the sides.
along the side. So
Yes.
they're here, here. These didn't quite get rendered the same way these guys got rendered.
where
but
are they?
basically it's-
Oh, those things right there.
Right.
Correct.
They
So
just
they're
cover the
Bermuda-
top.
Yeah, they're Bermuda shade. Whoops.
So it's more focused on the front and the second floor.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. The applicant is requesting project design approval and final approval.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have some comments.
Yes.
I think it's a well-designed home. I have a struggle with your standing metal seams. Granted, there have been homes there, and we have approved them in the past, but we actually went out to a field trip. And my experience of seeing these standing metal seam roofs on these small residences seems to be almost too industrial. It's not a pleasant, it's hard to, it just, they glare and they're kind of harsh, and I just struggle with them. So I welcome other comments from the chair, but I just don't, as an aesthetic compatibility to a small residential home, I just find it, I struggle to see the appropriateness of them.
I'm leaning the other way. I like the standing seam roofs on the houses, and I think it doesn't drastically change the style of the architecture in the whole Lower Mesa area. In fact, as you said, I think it adds to the I won't say the value, but adds to the architecture of the house and changes it enough that it looks nice. It looks nice, and as far as, and it's just my own opinion, as far as industrial, I don't think it looks industrial at all. I think it looks, it's getting to be, people are liking it, and it's getting to be very common, and a lot of the houses, a lot of the cottages on the Lower Mesa are using this style.
Other comments? Yes.
I waffle on this issue because while I feel that it looks really great on this house and it complements the architecture, it's questionable whether or not we want to set a precedent in the neighborhood, and there are existing standing seams. So I don't know how I'm going to vote, but if we do consider a standing seam, I think it just needs to be done well and consider what we were looking at as far as the ridge cap being not too extensive. So I don't know yet. Sitting on the fence.
Other comments?
I'll make a comment. I'm not opposed to the standing seam metal roof, but I appreciate what Fred is pointing out in terms of this cap piece, and so maybe you can indicate something in your plans that, keep it under a certain size so it's appropriate for the roof. Apart from that, I think that it's a nicely designed home and it looks like good work to me. So.
Did we, or do we know if we approved these two? Do we know if we did? Or?
I don't recall seeing these houses, but they may have been done before this board existed, or they may have been done. I've been on this board 6, almost 7 years, but I don't recall seeing them. I think one of the struggles we have with the standing seam roof, in my view, is the neighborhoods that have them and the neighborhoods that shouldn't have them. And I am, from my viewpoint, really resident to approve standing seam roofs, particularly on the Riviera, on the upper portions of the Mesa neighborhood where the homes rise up the hills, because those can be seen from all over the city. They do have a sheen on them. So I'm going to continue to be reluctant to approve those that are in those neighborhood conditions. One of the struggles we have is we have neighborhoods that were in a large portion of the city that were established virtually all at once because they were done as tract houses. You had model A, B, and C, and you got to pick between 4 models, and they had 3 different finishes, and most of them had asphalt shingle roofs. And we have a ton of those all over the Mesa, and this neighborhood was one of those, developed after the war. And tiny little houses on modest little lots, generally a lot of them one-car garages. They had all asphalt shingle roofs. And slowly that neighborhood has changed and is continuing to change. And part of our job is to assure that there is compatibility in the neighborhood. That's one of our standing things on the yellow sheet. And so that's the struggle. In this neighborhood, I'm not as concerned about standing seam. And I spent Saturday morning doing a long walk over on Shoreline Park and up and through the neighborhood just because it was a great day. And I did observe the standing seam. I observed the asphalt shingle roofs and other roof types, Spanish tile, et cetera. But that lower portion of the Mesa is not a neighborhood that can be seen from major view corridors across the city. You have to kind of go down into those neighborhoods to actually see, and that's why I brought these back up in front of the camera. You have to kind of see this neighborhood come together. So in that sense, I think that the standing seam roof can be appropriate in this neighborhood, not in all neighborhoods. But I think we have to be very careful about the detailing, because otherwise we could end up with something that isn't appropriate. So from that aspect, as long as we look at color, the color palette that's being proposed, and look at the detailing, then, in this particular neighborhood, probably one could support a standing seam roof. The other point I want to make is that oftentimes we have the applicant come to us asking us for project design approval and final approval all in one fell swoop. And I think we have to be careful as a board to make sure that we walk through these drawings, and that's why I was asking to look at certain details, because in some ways, once we say it looks like a final set, it's final set. And if we haven't looked at the details carefully and agreed that we're comfortable with how things are being detailed, we may find some things, and we've had that experience, where we get out on the site after it's all done and realize, oh, I don't recall looking at that. Well, that's because we may not have paid attention to the detailing. So that's why I was trying to make an effort to go through each sheet, see what the detailing looks like. That's why the lighting is important. That's why the detailing on things that have metal components are important. And it's not just a simple matter of approving the color board. So those are my comments. The applicant is here requesting project design approval and final approval. Any further comments? Hearing none, the chair would look for a motion. We can give it, we can do one of several things. We can just give it project design approval with or without comments. We could give it project design approval and final approval with comments that can be addressed before they get to the planning counter, or we could send it to consent calendar if the comments are minor enough for final.
I'll make that motion. I'd like to move that we give it final design approval.
You're going to have to do two. You have to do project design approval first. If you want to do final, then you can do that, but you've got to say
Okay.
that in that order.
I would like to give it final design approval and final approval. And with following comments. I would like to state that that we allow a standing seam roof on the project because it is in keeping with a lot of the, well, not a lot, but a few of the houses in the neighborhood, and it is the same size as those houses that were used as examples in the neighborhood. The size, bulk, and scale, I'll finish up, that it does meet our neighborhood preservation ordinance and findings, which go along with consistency in appearance and the compatibility of the surrounding neighborhood, quality, definitely quality and of architectural materials and good neighbor guidelines.
What's your motion?
My motion.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Any further comments to the motion on the floor? Oh, did I get a second? Nobody second? Oh, I have no second, the motion...
I'll second it.
Okay. If we don't get a second, the motion dies. Okay, we have a second and a motion. Any further discussion to the motion on the floor?
Joe, did you make the NPO findings?
I think that's what he was
Okay.
reading.
That's what I was
Yeah, it
reading.
sounded like it, but I just, okay.
Okay, any further discussion to the motion? Yes.
Would the maker of the motion like to add something about the board is okay with the lighting proposed and the second appreciates the reduction of the second story balcony by 3.5 feet?
Okay, yes. I think my motion also includes the fact that these lightings, we were taking it at your word that these lightings are not, would not be glowing if we look at them straight horizontally. They're throwing the light down. I think that's what the board is concerned with, that we don't have a light that looks like a spotlight. I mean, it looks like a globe just right there. Okay. And yes, we appreciate you reducing the size of the balconies.
Okay, that's part of your motion. Is that
Yes.
acceptable to the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Any further comments to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
One opposed. Abstentions? Okay, we have a 4 to 1 of approval. Okay. This has a 10-day appeal period, and you can proceed to the building department.
Yep. No.
right on time. Okay, let's go to item number 2, 636 Aurora Avenue. This is here for fourth concept review. Project design approval is requested. Project was last reviewed October 30th, 2017. If you could introduce yourself, please.
My name is Nicole Troutman. I'm representing the client today from CSA Architects.
Okay. Mr. Miller, if you could read our comments from October 30th, please.
Yes. Number 1, lower the second floor plate heights to 7 feet 6 inches. Number 2, change the style of the roofs on the second story to a half hip. Number 3, the board supported the location of the second floor addition. Number 4, the positioning of the windows on the north elevation will mitigate privacy issues between the adjacent properties. Action taken by Motisha, seconded by Miller. Motion was carried.
Okay, thank you. If you could share with us how you've addressed those comments, please.
Sure. I'll just go right to the elevation that we modified to show that we did, in fact, change the second story plate heights to 7 feet 6 inches. So we did lower it per your request. And also, we took the existing style of roof, which can be seen right here. This is existing. And we basically applied the same exact style to this south elevation piece of roof right here as well.
Let's see what it looks like when it's.
Now, before that was just a facade is in the same plane as the exterior wall. So we did create some uniformity. And also on this part of the roof right here, we also applied that same roof style as well. So we just kept with the continuity. And this can also be seen.
That's what we're.
Yep. So, you know, this adds a little bit more view. And also, this is the only other piece that changed. We were asked to do this as well. Before, this was all stucco up to here, and we just, you know, to keep the design continuity, we gave this a hip style roof here as well.
Architecture. Scale.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Okay, go ahead and proceed. Is that it?
That's it. These were the only modifications that we were requested to
Okay.
attend to, and we have done so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we go to comments and questions from the board, we do have 2 speakers. Katie, did we have any written comments?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. You have 2 minutes to address the board. The first speaker I have is Nick Denali. You'll come up and use that microphone, please. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Nick Denselli, 640 Aurora Avenue, the uphill neighbor. I've been president of all these meetings. Unfortunately, Joan Coyle is the Roberto area neighbor above me. She couldn't be here because of some health concerns, but she asked me to speak on her behalf. If you look at the initial plan that we had, the initial presentation that was given, we're at about 99% of what was originally given. You know, the only things that have changed have been the eaves. Some of the windows have changed, and we've dropped the plate height a couple of inches. You know, when we first brought this, or this was first brought to us, 2 of the board members said, this doesn't meet single-family design review board standards. And another member said, I wouldn't want to look at that. And it still feels like this is 99% the exact same plan. Twice we heard, move the structure away from your neighbor that's above you. And twice, nothing has been done. And we asked them to center it, and the board members asked them to center it as well. It wasn't done. You know, there's good neighbor hillside guidelines and good neighbor guidelines. It seems like both of those have been ignored. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it just seems like we're getting force-fed the exact same plan, and now we're all getting so tired of it, we don't want to see it again. And so we're kind of left in a situation of what to do next. What should have been done and was suggested in the first meeting was story pools, and we're moving forward with our second story. So we have engineering in the works right now. We would like to see story pools, take photos, show different angles, because we're going to have to change our second story plan. We're going to have to change walls around. We're going to have to change windows around. But we're moving forward, and what they do is going to heavily impact us. You guys obviously know that you've already approved our plan. There's a potential we have to go back now and change around our windows, change around our structure because of this project. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one more thing while I still have some time. I don't know if you remember this project in the Mesa. This to me is a good example of two neighbors working together. You know, one neighbor is about 6 feet away from it, the other neighbor is about 4 feet away from it. And this isn't even blocking anyone's view. This is not even on top of each other. This is, sorry, this is just right next to each other.
Okay.
So I thought that was a good example of, you know, two neighbors, and it feels like I'm this guy right here. I'm back up 6 feet, and maybe if they can meet me partway and back up a couple feet, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. I have Rosalind.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having us. It's very, very simple. I am the neighbor above, behind as well. And I hope that you've all driven by the property and seen how very close the Saffins are to the back of their property line and how close we are to the front. And given those reasons, given that, in addition to everything else we've requested, what essentially will be built in front of us is a big wall that we're going to look out to and our children are going to look out to. Each meeting we've come to, you have asked them to reach out and work with us and exhibit good neighbor policy. That has not happened yet. Each meeting you have asked them to move it slightly more centered and more forward. They never did do that. However, it does appear that at this point, nobody wants to see this plan anymore. So I respectfully request that you consider that we have been to each meeting and seen that you have made requests of them that they have not fulfilled. And we ask that you consider our perspective from directly behind them as you move forward with this project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I see the minutes?
Yes. Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address the board? Seeing no one else come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions?
Did we, on the, what should we say, the east elevation? East elevation?
Let's go back. They're pouring in
One
incorrectly.
that everybody's,
Yeah, that's what I was looking.
North is up the hill.
okay, then the north elevation, sorry, north elevation.
North elevation. Go here.
That was to my recollection, that was one solid wall at one time.
Right. Had it moved back and forth.
Been moved back and forth and changed, and we put a hip roof over that part that is forward.
And we had them move all the windows
Those
high.
windows have been
Oh,
changed.
sorry, quick, the 7'6" mark, I think
Oops.
it's incorrect, but not a big deal. Your windows are actually drawn.
That's finished floor line, and 7.6 is right where they show it.
I'm sorry, the 6'8" window height. I apologize.
They're a little lower. They're at 6.6.
So there'll be a little bit more space between
Yeah.
the eave and the top of the trim window.
Okay.
Okay, no, I'm just
Okay, other questions?
dreaming here.
Okay. I do have a question, but it's for the board. The issue of story poles. One of the concerns that the neighbors have is their visualization of this project in relationship to their homes as they cascade down the street. And so the question to the board that I'd like you to consider as we proceed to comments is whether or not you believe at this point now that we may be at a point where the plan is generally acceptable and the elevations are generally acceptable, that we would ask the applicant then to proceed with story poles before we give it project design approval. That's one option. One of the issues that we've seen in numerous neighborhoods where we have this conflict of one-story tract houses now wanting to be two-story tract houses, and this neighborhood has a number of those issues. So we've seen a number of houses within this area with the same issue. Is to look at some of the issues that we've dealt with before. There is a home that we approved on Cliff Drive, and it's the one before the stop line. I can never remember the street before you get to Monroe School. On a really tight, skinny lot, and we had the designer move that whole plate height way down. Yeah, is it Fellowship Lane? Yeah. We had him.
No, Flores. Flores are the ones at the light. Flores. Flora Vista.
Flora Vista is the
Goes
light,
up.
the next one over. Anyway, we've had that. I go by it now often, and I think about every time we had that discussion, lengthy discussion, and I think the applicant designer was here 4 or 5 times. But we've made him push that whole floor down to 7'6" on the top. The other example is we approved a home on Upper State Street between Quinto and Junipero Street on the ocean side of State. And again, a lot of concern about, particularly one neighbor, about the height in relationship to the 2 homes on each side. It was actually a lot carved out of a bigger parcel originally. You know which one I'm talking about. And you drive by that today, and we really struggle, but we made the second floor come down to 7'6". It had gable and hips. It had very similar configurations, and I think at this point you would hardly notice the difference as they cascade down. And there were some privacy issues between the one house looking into the other house, and small lot lines. So, and a photograph was offered today of similar 2-story elements next to each other. So. I think even if we as a board are satisfied that in 3 dimensions this is going to work, I think we may have the obligation to provide that information so that folks in the neighborhood can visualize it better by requiring story poles. But I'm going to pose that as a question as you proceed with your comments.
Let me follow up with that. I totally agree with you, because basically you've answered every one of our concerns. You did exactly what we said, and I have to turn myself on. So like I said, you agreed based on the minutes that you did exactly what we requested, and so I think at this point in time, story poles would be critical because we're in a position where, and my impression by looking at the site plan where you've actually located the second floor, if you're going to add one, actually decreases your blockage of a view as opposed to pushing it over the other way. So I think, story poles would be important and appropriate, and in particular the character of this neighborhood, because just the way the houses are located, it's going to be contentious. So I think as far as what you've designed, I'd approve it, but I think story poles would be appropriate.
Are we putting, I can't comment on story poles. Are we putting the story poles up to satisfy all 4 of the, say, 3 or 4 of the people here? Or are we putting them up to make a decision on whether we're going to, story poles are something you put up at front in the first when you start designing it, and you tell the people next door that, here's the second story and it's going to go up and here's what's going to block. But the designer has already designed it, and now we're putting story poles up, which is a cost to the, I understand.
I understand that, but they don't have concept approval. So this is as if they came in the first day. We've been moving back and forth. I've always been reluctant, as you point out, story poles are expensive. They do cost money. So I'm always reluctant to require someone put story poles up, but I think in this case we're at a point where this project seems to have gotten to a point with our review that we're comfortable in a lot of respects, but I think to get our level of comfort to where it needs to be, and certainly for the neighborhood to understand what's going on, story poles may be appropriate. That's why I bring up.
Story poles will be then addressed to us, the board,
Yes.
not to anybody else, because we still have the option to move the second story around.
It also falls under the guise of good neighbor policy, good neighbor guidelines, so
And
that
I'm
would satisfy
aware
that
of
as
that.
well.
That's one thing I am aware of.
Okay.
Okay. And I agree with it.
Okay,
I can
well,
go along
we
with
haven't come to a decision. Do we have other questions? If not, do we have comments now? And we've
Yeah.
kind of got the comments.
Gotcha. Apologize.
No questions.
Okay.
If I can, just if the board decides to request story polls, I could refer you to this section that
I
has
have
the
it right,
different
I have it in
levels.
front of me, and I'll if you would like me to summarize what they say. Basically, there are 3 levels. Full level is all major building forms, corners, ridges, eaves, rakes, outer plate heights, and ridge lines shall be shown with vertical poles and string lines. In addition, stake and string and chalk the property lines where they are not clear, outline the building footprints with stakes and strings. All roof planes should be outlined to show the full body of the structure. Also mark all trees proposed to be removed from bright tape or stakes. Generally, the full level is one that one would use if this were a completely new project on a bare site or a non-built site. Standard level is selecting building forms as determined by the board or commission shall be shown with vertical poles and requested string lines. Poles at all building corners at the correct heights are to outline portions of the selected roof forms, show the location of any stakes or chalk string lines used to outline the building footprint. Basic level, select locations at the highest building elements as determined by the board or commission shall be shown with vertical poles only. Poles are to be have colored flag, tape markers, or specific heights at the highest ridge roof point where there is the greatest view impact. Locate any stakes or chalk string lines used to outline the building footprint. Okay, so there's basically 3 levels. Excuse me. So that's the definitions. I would recommend, if we are going to require story poles, that we use at minimum the standard level requirement, and that we as a board determine that we do want the ridge lines and eaves and rakes completely shown, and that, unlike in the past where we haven't said this, I'd like the horizontals, if you're using wire, they need to be a bright flag of some sort. They can use those orange construction lines, not just a wire or a pencil, that nobody can see those. So they have to be clearly visible. That would be my recommendation. So the chair would look for comments, and if not comments, a motion.
If I have an opportunity to comment again, I would like to take it.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and comment, and then I'm going to request a motion.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess my question to the board is, to what end do we go? I know you're requesting story poles now, but the board has repeatedly said that they're not in the business of preserving ocean views, and we've accommodated all the requests. As far as the good neighbor guidelines, my client has, proof of steps that they have taken, and at this point it's, neighbor's word against another neighbor's word. So we've accommodated all these things, but would the board then ask us to lower the plate height to 7 feet? I mean, how low does this second story have to go?
That may not be the issue. Once we see the story poles, that may not be the issue. It may be 7.6 is fine, but it may be something else. Until we see that volume up there, that doesn't allow us to see everything in play. Each one of us are trying to visualize this individually. That's, one of the reasons we sit on this board, supposedly we're professionals and deal with this stuff, and maybe perhaps more than others, we can visualize things in 3 dimensions. Not everybody's able to do that. I've been at this for 40 years, and I've had a lot of clients who can't visualize in 3 dimensions. So that's an option that we have before we can get to a decision. And so the question in front of the board is whether we want to do that option.
I mean, we can do a 3D model. I'm trying to save the owner an unnecessary expense, and I'd be willing to do a 3D model if that.
You heard us. We understand that. But we also have a neighborhood compatibility issue we have to deal with. Okay? So this board's got to make that decision. So the question is to the board. I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Yes.
The board would move, prior to giving the project design approval, that we conduct a site visit with the standard level of story poles, showing ridge lines, eaves, rakes, and bright flags on the horizontal lines to illuminate the volume. The board does approve the 7'6" plate height lowering and the changes of the roof fenestration. Do you call roof fenestration, or is that just windows?
Roof shape.
Roof shape.
Fenestration is windows.
Okay. Oops. Yeah, that's my motion.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor.
If I can just clarify,
Yes.
that's continued indefinitely back to the full board.
Right.
Yes.
And so, Katie, it will be a publicly noticed scheduled site visit?
Yes, we'll put a notice on the agenda when it's
Thank you.
scheduled.
I second it.
And there is a second to the motion. Okay, before we complete the motion, is there any other comments? Okay, just so the audience understands, if the board approves this motion, basically what we're requiring is the applicant to put story poles up. Once those are up, we will be notified as a board. We will have a collective site visit to the site. You'll be notified. You can attend that. It's just as if we had a meeting out there. However, we will take no comments, answer no questions. It's only for our review. City attorney has clearly indicated that we're not allowed to have any conversations or decision-making process at that site observation. That will occur at the meeting. Now, typically, the way they schedule this is they will schedule that site visit in the morning or late afternoon before 3 o'clock. Typically, it's generally around 2. And then we'll go out, look at the house, it'll come back, and then it'll be scheduled at some point in the agenda for that same day for the same meeting.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify, there isn't a public notice that will go out for the site visit. There will just be a note on the agenda stating that there's a site visit conducted for a specific item.
And the notice is posted on Thursday before the meeting, correct?
No, there won't be that's what I'm saying, there won't be a
It'll be on
notice.
the agenda, though. It'll be on the agenda.
It'll be on the agenda,
It
that's
gets
correct.
posted on Thursday before the meeting that's scheduled.
Yeah, but there won't, yes.
Okay, correct. Okay, that's the motion. There's a second. Is there further discussion to the motion?
I just wanted to add one comment that the story poles will be so we can see the proposed architecture in relation to the surrounding area.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay. So if you'll work with Katie to get that scheduled, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Yep. Okay. All right, we're at item, what time are we at?
Number 3.
Oh, we're 3, and we're relatively on time. Okay, item number 3, 626 Alston Road. This is here for a third concept review. Project design approval is requested. Project requires an environmental finding for a CEQA guideline section 15183 exemption. Project consistent with the general plan. Project was last reviewed October 16th, 2017. You'll introduce yourself, please.
Sure, Dylan Henderson with Salt Architecture.
Welcome.
Thank you. So,
Before you start, Mr. Miller is going to read comments
Great.
from our last review on October 16th.
okay.
Number one. Does this work? Okay. The board appreciates the changes that were presented. Number 2, remove the glass sound wall from the back patio area. The board explained that it is not necessary since the layered vegetation screening shown on sheet L1.2 is adequate to mitigate the sound measures between the two properties. If additional screening is desired, the designer could consider adding a lattice screen at the terrace wall with additional vegetation. Number 3, the 9 lights proposed for the trellis are acceptable. Number 4, the tree mitigation plan needs to comply with the Planning Commission resolution. Number 5, return with a sample of the proposed standing seam metal roof as the board had concerns with the sheen that could occur from the proposed material. Number 6, the board found the general materials being proposed as depicted on the three-dimensional sketches and elevations found on sheets A3.1 and A3.2 applicable to design compatibility with the neighborhood. Number 7, the board encouraged the applicant to return with the general coloration of the architectural elements of the home. Number 8, careful consideration should be given to the coursing layout of the Santa Barbara sandstone as indicated but not depicted on the architectural drawings, particularly at the entry gate. Number 9, return with careful consideration of the exterior lighting at the driveway, entry gate, and northerly portion of the front entrance of the house to mitigate the light pollution at the neighboring property. Number 10, the board advised that it would be looking at the mitigation for protection of all the existing trees that are to remain on the site as the project proceeds. Action taken by James, seconded by Motisha. Motion was carried.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you could share with us how you address those comments.
Absolutely. So I think I'll start with the standing seam, the first one. So I got an actual sample of the color that we're proposing, and we took it up on site and laid it out there in sort of several different times of the day so we could see what the sheen results were. And this is what they consider to be a very flat paint on a standing seam, and this is the color that we're proposing. And so that's their flat sheen, and when we took it up on site, you know, the reality is you'll be driving into the site and you will see that front of roof because that's down at 270 and the driveway entrance is at 293, and that's just it's just how the topography on that site works. And my client, who's really the one who's going to be most impacted by that, was really very happy with this. And so they wanted me to express that to you, that they didn't have concerns with the sheen. And so I brought the full panel in so you could see that it really is relatively a flat sheen on that panel. The second thing was as a material color palette. And so I brought the materials that we're considering using on the project. And so this is the decking that's going to be around the pool. It's also the color of the timber elements that we'll have on the house. And this is going to be really what I mixed up for them that gets as close as possible to this is sort of a Jacobine with a walnut mix in the stain. And it kind of gets to this color. And so that's the timber color. Our house color, the body of the house, will be this gray shadows from the PPG paint sample, and then the trim will be Gibraltar gray. And the Gibraltar gray with the gray shadows is the main body of the house tied to the Santa Barbara sandstone, which we have in an ashlar pattern. We went and looked at a lot of different stone samples, and they really like the ashlar pattern with as tight of a mortar line as possible for the main house. It also turns out that when you look at all of the different stone patterns, that ashlar is a more reasonably priced pattern as opposed to like a standard Santa Barbara 5-point or something like that. And they very much like the look of it. And so the depiction that I have on the plans actually does come very close to what that ashlar pattern would look like with sort of as minimal a grout joint as possible. And I can bring in, at final, for instance, I could bring in an actual sample of that if you wanted to see it. So I brought in the Santa Barbara sandstone, and it would be this Santa Barbara sandstone veneer, which is what we're talking about doing. The corners will be true stone so that they read as a real thickened dimension on that. So that sort of addressed the material on the house. So that kind of covered a whole bunch of different conditions within your 1 through 10, I think, as we went through this. So what were the other ones that we needed to?
So we had the grounds.
Oh, yeah.
The glass.
Right.
wall.
So the glass wall on the rear has been removed. And so I have not added, so it's been removed off of the perspectives and the elevations. I haven't added the trellis at the rear. One, because we thought that the screening, if you reference the landscape plan sheet L1.2, the amount of screening that's going to be at the rear of the house with those proposed hedges is really so dense, and we're so far below the neighboring property that we really felt that that was going to provide as much green screening as they would want. And they're going to want more privacy than anyone else. So if it turns out that they need some additional screening, they could investigate that lattice, but they didn't want to necessarily be tied to it from a design standpoint. If that's acceptable to you all, was that we just removed the glass.
I think last time you had a photograph of the grape stake fence that you brought.
Yeah, and so that's in this, in the landscape plan. So if we go to, yeah, this is sheet L2.0 had, but does it have the photo of the grape stake here? This was Rob's plan. Did we have it on L1? I think Rob had brought in an individual photo.
That's what I recall.
Of the grape stake. Oh, no, here it is. I'm sorry. L1.3. He has his grape stake fence that he's proposing as in the fencing plan. And as far as the lighting goes on the front, so the only lighting we have on that front, this has to be changed. This is going to be an ashlar pattern. So I'll make sure that for final that comes back in showing a correct depiction of that. But the only lighting we were going to have was backlit numbers on 626 at the entry gate. That's the only lighting that we'll have up there. And then we won't actually have any lighting as we go down the driveway. The only light will be located on the garage. So they didn't want any of the light spill kind of coming over into the neighbors. That's how it's being considered now. They're looking at doing obviously for the next meeting, we'll have a full planting plan and everything else. If there are iterations to that, you'll see that. But as of now, we're talking about a very minimal light with backlit lighting on the 626 for fire department regulations, and then no lighting along the driveway.
Okay. All right, I'm just going through this list.
Absolutely.
I think that covers the bulk of it. One of the things was tree mitigation, but that had to do also with the Planning Commission requirements.
Yes.
So Katie, you just handed me this document.
So the project does comply with the Planning Commission resolution. They have a substantial conformance determination that was made. What I handed you is if you decide to grant the project design approval, you'll need to make the CEQA 15183 determination, which I think is on the other sheet. That one there, and then also the standard short-term related conditions of approval if you grant project
Which I
design.
believe does have tree conditions.
Tree protection measures for, yes.
Okay.
Right. We have a single oak tree coming out in the driveway right now, and everything else is understood to be protected on the site.
Okay. Anything else? That's it?
I brought an additional set that has further detailing on the pergola and trellises and things like that, but I don't think it's as relevant for this meeting unless you'd like to see some of those details.
Okay, I'll let board members decide.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to our conversation, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Katie, I have one sheet of correspondence received today, I guess.
That's correct.
Email from Susan and Bobby Shad. They're the neighbors immediately above this site. They're still concerned that the grape stake fence isn't solid enough. They'd still like a solid wall or wooden fence. And they prefer the natural muted tones for the color of the house. And I think that summarizes it. All of you have a copy of that, had a chance to read it? Okay. Anything else, Katie?
No, but I guess I'd just like to make a comment that if the board does grant the project design approval, you'll need to make the NPO findings, adopt the standard short-term related conditions of approval, make the 15183 CEQA determination, and then also make the hillside findings.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, who has questions? I do have a couple. As you may have witnessed a little earlier, our lengthy discussion on standing seam roofs.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea yet of what the details might look like for the standing seam?
Well, it's interlocked, and it's going to be just, one will be lapped underneath the other one, and then we're going to have,
How high is the seam?
This is exactly.
So is that 1 3/4?
I actually didn't measure that, but
Okay.
it looks like it's 1
And
3/8.
then the ridge line
And the ridge
dimensions?
line cap that goes over the top is roughly 6 inches either side.
Okay.
As a ridge cap.
Okay. And then, did I catch the window trim color on the elevations?
No, I didn't put window trim color on the elevation.
So are those clad windows?
Yes, they're going to be clad, and they'll be clad in black
They're black. So that's sitting next to what color?
to this gray shadow.
To that gray shadow. So they're going to be black to that.
Yep.
And then the fascia trim is,
Gibraltar gray.
and that's sitting next to that
It's sitting next to this.
standard seam?
So from a color palette standpoint, and then we have accents of timber. So from a color standpoint, we have that.
So if I look at this, if I just look at that, these are the timber
Correct.
components.
Correct.
That's a timber component, this is a fascia component, which is that color.
Gibraltar gray, correct.
Okay, and then the stiles, et cetera, on the doors and on the windows are black.
Yes.
And then I think you shared with us last time, this is all butt joints?
Yes, that's all butt joints.
I think you answered my question on lighting in the driveway. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, is this is the style, or the course and the design of the whole front wall across the whole, on the front of the property?
Are you talking the entry gate?
Yes.
Yeah, the entry gate, right.
So that wall, that whole wall on each side of the entry gate will be this small?
Well, no. I mean, I think what you're looking at, and that's why I was saying I can bring in a full-size sample for you, but there's only so much scaling you can do in these programs on these patterns.
More.
And so, yeah, and I can actually, if you need me, I could bring up on my phone an
No,
actual.
I'm just concerned that
Yeah,
that whole
this is
wall
sort
doesn't
of
look.
more, no, this is sort of more the scale of your medium-sized pieces, and it goes down from there. So there will be some pieces that are sort of this size, but the ashlar pattern is a very random sized pattern. So this should actually be scaled up, I would say 25 to 30% in order to get a really accurate
Larger.
depiction of what that ashlar pattern looks like.
Because you're going to get something that looks like that.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly
But this
right.
is too small and even.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a limitation of the program as opposed to actually what it will be in real life.
Okay. Yes.
I'm looking at A0.1, the perspective. So will you be moving to 5-point then for the flat work? Or is that just sort of
That'll be
representational?
Yeah, that'll be a flagstone pattern. Yeah, that'll be a random flagstone pattern, and those pieces will be more like 24 by 24.
And will some of it be permeable, or will it all be mortared?
Well, on the terrace on the house, obviously it will be mortared. On some of these rear patios, as you step down, these can be set on dirt and have a sand base to them for sure. The upper patio, right off the house, will be mortared because that will have to have sort of a concrete base to it. And some of these lower patios could definitely be on sand base.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a question. What is the timber material? Just
The timber material, will
Yeah,
be
like the-
it'll be a Doug fir that gets stained. So like these front entry columns are 8x8s in Doug fir, and that'll be sort of a clear grain Doug fir that then will stain out. And you have to take them darker so they don't go orange over their lifetime, which is why we're going with more of a kind of an English walnut look. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay. The applicant's requesting project design approval. So let's go to comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, based on my comments I made about the standing seam metal roof of the previous house, I actually think it's appropriate on this particular structure. because I feel like this is like a carriage house. I think it's set down into the valley and it has minimal visual impact. In fact, based on your color scheme, I would say this house probably will kind of vanish as time goes on and the area matures. So I think I can support the current project.
Okay. Other comments?
Yes, after so many times in front of us, I can finally say that I feel the project is supportable and you've worked hard to accommodate our requests. So, thank you.
Other comments?
I'll
Other
make a
comments?
comment.
Yes.
I like the design of the home. I think it's a good choice of materials, and it seems like it kind of addressed the issues that were brought forth, so I support it.
Okay. I'd like to go back to make a comment about the fence. The adjacent neighbors are still requesting a solid wall or a wood fence, and I'll go back to that photograph of the grape stake.
A1.3.
And that is a wood fence. A grape stake is a wood fence. So in my mind, given the amount of landscaping and hedging and shrubbery, yes, early on that fence, that grape stake fence will provide adequate privacy, I believe, between the two properties, particularly because this property sits down below. You really kind of have to walk to the edge of their lawn to look down into where that fence is. And even up here, when you walk down here, this is all going to get very mature. And eventually that grape stake fence will just go away because it's going to be hidden given the amount of landscaping. So that is a wood fence, and I think it's acceptable. Other comments? Okay, the chair would look for a motion.
I'll make a motion. So is this?
Now, you have to do several things. If you're going to make a motion to give this concept approval, you have to know the neighborhood compatibility issues.
Okay.
You need to address the issue of the colors and the fence. And you need to read into the record the CEQA guideline approval, which is that sheet. And then the standard short-term construction-related conditions. And just for those that are listening, it covers excuse me, specific issues about landscaping under trees, irrigation, tree protection during construction. It talks about the limited hours of construction-related truck trips. Haul routes have to be filed with the city, Public Works Department, traffic control plan. There is a parking, storage, and staging requirement, air quality, dust particles, and grading during construction, so for a stormwater management control plan.
The whole thing, right?
No, you just need to read
Just read the date that it's.
this upper piece right there.
Okay, good. You scared me. Okay.
But I just want to make sure people understood we know what that says.
And then make sure to include the hillside findings as well.
Okay. I move to give this project design approval with the following comments. The consistency and appearance is consistent with the scenic character of the city and enhances the appearance of the neighborhood. The compatibility is compatible with the neighborhood in its size, bulk, and scale, and appropriate to the site and neighborhood. The quality of architecture and materials is of the proposed structures are appropriate, and with the natural appearance of the ridgeline and hillside. The client has also followed good neighbor guidelines with a good neighbor guide regarding privacy, landscaping, noise, and lighting. We'd also like to make a comment of the Single-Family Design Board finds that the project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under CEQA guidelines section 15183 based on the city staff analysis and CEQA certificate of determination on the file for this project. Also to put on to, following that, the standard short-term construction related conditions to be applied regarding construction implementation, landscape compliance, dated November 27th, 2017 from the City Santa Barbara Planning Division. And what was that other item? And that they applied to the hillside design guidelines. which are the natural topography protection of the development, including the proposed structure and grading, is appropriate to the site, designed to avoid visible scarring and significantly modify the natural topography of the site or the natural appearance of any ridgeline or hillside. The building scale of the development in a form that blends with the hillside by minimizing the visual appearance of structures and the overall height of the structures. That's my motion.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion? Okay, is there further discussion to the motion?
Could the maker of the motion specify whether the project's coming back to the or full board or consent for final?
I would recommend date based on the scale and size of this project that goes before the full board.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Would the maker of the motion like to add the piece about the removal of the glass sound wall from the back?
Yeah, the board
area?
appreciates and accepts the design architect removal of the glass sound wall. Also, I would like to add that the wooden grape stake fencing is appropriate for this particular project, and that the privacy issues with the grape stake fencing will be appropriate and will blend in well with the overall topography and natural appearance of the property.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the seconder of the motion? Yeah. Okay. That's the motion on the floor. Everyone understand the motion?
I have one more addition to put,
Okay.
and the board feels that based on the location of the structure and the overall style and design of the house, that the standing metal seam roofing is appropriate.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the seconder? Yes. Okay. Now, do we have a full motion? Everybody clear? Hearing no further additions to the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried.
Pretty
This
good.
has a 10-day appeal period.
Very good, Brian.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much, guys. Thank you.
Back to
So I keep two, Kitty?
Yeah, you can keep the other two.
Okay, we're going to go to item number 4. This is 1199 Harbor Hills Drive. This is here for a second concept review. It's here for comments only. Project still requires staff hearing officer review for zoning modification requests. Project was last reviewed August 21st, 2017. Hi. You could introduce yourself, please.
I'm Richard Thorne, the architect and agent for the trust that owns the property.
Okay, welcome. Mr. Miller is going to read comments here in a moment.
Okay. Number 1, provide an elevation of what is existing, including all the sides of the geometry. Number 2, provide an elevation with the proposed changes on the same page as the existing home elevation so that they can be seen side by side. Number 3, the board requested that the applicant return with the square footage of each of the proposed decks. Number 4, the board requests that the application consider reducing the overall size of the decks. Number 5, the board requested that the applicant return with a deck railing system that does not include glass railings and look into other methods of mitigating any wind concerns. Number 6, study ways to reduce the square footage of the house and bring the FAR closer to 85%. Number 7, the applicant should not introduce side decks towards the neighboring property at the east and west. Number 8, if changes are made to the east and west elevations, the applicant is to identify the location of the windows within the at 1187 Harbor Hills Drive and or 1211 Harbor Hills Drive so that the board can understand the relationship and potential privacy issues. Number 9, the board stated that it would exercise its responsibility to maintain the single-family design board guideline that all decks be located no closer than 15 feet off any property line. Number 10, the applicant is to return with a suggested set of materials and colors to aid the board in understanding what to propose for the architectural siding, roofing materials, and deck materials. Number 11, the board indicated that it could find the modifications aesthetically acceptable, architecturally acceptable, once it fully understood what the elements looked like. Number 12, re-study the front entry. Action taken by Motisha, seconded by Miller. Motion was carried.
Okay, thank you. So if you could share with us how you addressed those comments?
Okay, if you would like, I can show you the elevations. We can just take them
Okay.
one at a time as we go through, if that could be
Okay.
easiest. What I did was provide the existing, actually, this was the construction document that shows the existing shapes and forms, and this is what we were proposing. Excuse me, this has a tab slightly oblique because the building got that bend in it. The elements that we're changing, like this is being the front elevation, is suggesting that this portion, which is where the garage and, which is right now just a big flat two-story with the wood banding that goes through it, proposing to do, and I left the small deck on the corner. That's something that's later talked about, of course, in the comments. We could put and leave the original shape, which comes all the way over to here, with the big gable on the end, or soften the edge by clipping this back and reducing the square footage on the upper floor. I think that's the best solution because it opens the corner up better rather than seeing the big gable that's at the end. This is a small, very small deck that occurs out of the living room area, reshaping windows pretty consistent as you see. So generally the glass area is pretty much the same, just redistributed in different ways. This one got reduced in its width, and that's primarily because of the configuration of the kitchen. The entry doors stay in the same place. This form was pushed back against the house a little bit more, but still attempting to get a entry statement that actually makes the front door work where it's got protection, etc. So that's done for all sides. I added to the drawings, in addition to the front, which you saw before, but this has of course been modified, the left elevation, which is the west side, and the existing that we're talking about here, this is where this is all big and flat. I'm proposing that that deck would be in here, and there's a portion of this section here, which is where the barbecue area was, and the screen wall that makes that basically screen from the neighboring property. But this is the small section of deck. It's about 11-foot squared is what I'm proposing at that point. All the rest of this area is the roof deck of the area below, which we can see better in the floor plan. Did the same thing for the other side. This is the side we're really actually making no change to any of the glass on this side of the building. It's a change of material, the roof line, all of that stays the same. That's unchanged. Then again, you're seeing an oblique portion of the roof deck and the home theater below at that location. I'll show you the roof plan. I think it helps show the areas that are being modified of the basic building. That's the next sheet. And this is the front of the house is here, but this whole section in here, all the way into here, and all of this in here is basically being left alone. As far as the roof construction is concerned, we'll be doing new roofing, but the shapes basically are the same. The original roof line and gable came all the way out to here, and I'm proposing to pull that back about 12 feet total, and that's what that is. These forms are the forms, that the box beam forms that you see on the elevation that will support just a cable and canvas shadings so they can control it. What I would propose as far as lighting generally, I haven't got into all that at this point because I think we're not quite there yet, is that there will be can lighting that will happen in here that provide general lighting indirect down on deck surface. Don't see any light fixtures per se in the back. So that is basically how I addressed the first comments regarding the elevation so you could see what was existing and what was not. So hopefully that's adequate to be able to see those differences. Now the square footages on the decking, originally they just weren't seen, but they were in the plan. But that has changed. We now have, and that's on the plan right here, as the deck areas and the specific areas that are called out. The main deck, the little front deck, the deck level for the lower deck, and the basement deck. So that's the total. This beige section you see here is the existing deck. That's what already is there now. It has existing glass rails in it. And we're proposing to go away from the glass per your request and go with a cable-type system. Oh, you got it there, all right.
So just to be clear, when you say main deck, where is that?
That main deck would be everything defined right here in that area that's hatched, including this piece in here. Well, no, excuse me, I separated that one because there was a question about whether we do it or not. But anyway, that's the total. What is main deck is the total area. This little piece is the small balcony piece.
That's the 25.
That's the
square
25
feet.
front.
Then level 1 of 1,200 is where?
That's all of this.
That's this piece.
You got it.
And
Then on the next level down, if we go down one sheet, you'll see the other deck, which is the one in the basement level. Stuck together. That is this deck right here.
Okay, and so if we could go, just so we're clear, let's go back to the elevations just for a moment. So this is where?
This level right here.
Okay.
This this here is the upper level.
So if I go back to this plan, that piece is this piece, correct?
No, it's covering, no, this piece sits on top of the lower floor. This is, in essence, the roof of the theater below.
Okay, so where is that on the elevation?
That's this.
That's that.
Yeah, and it's, well, let's look at the cross-section. It'll show you easier on the cross-section to visualize how that works. Am I going the wrong way? There we go. Main deck, there's a cantilever there to create shade for the home theater from south side. This is the lower deck.
Okay, so just to go back and equate that to the square footages, this deck is 1,200?
Yes. No, that's the basement, 430 square feet. That's this level.
All right, and then there's a 1,202?
That's this level.
Okay, and then there's an 1,188. Where's that? We have main deck at 1,188,
No,
1,000.
this is total level one. But this is the total of those two.
Okay,
Main
so
deck,
I was
front
reading
deck,
this.
and total.
Okay, so this is that number.
That's correct. You got
Okay.
it. Yeah,
That's
so
what
our
I was
total on that level is the 1,202.
And that's this deck.
Yes,
And then we've got 430, which is this deck.
correct. That's correct.
Okay. And the square footage for this little deck is where? That went away?
No, that's included in the,
1188?
yeah, in the 1188. And the 25 is the small
Okay.
piece on the front.
And what I'm trying to understand is on your side elevation,
It's forward.
right here, there is a deck, and then there's,
This actually decks from here to here. This is open above. This is a screen wall. This is the barbecue area.
so what I'm looking
Outside
here is
kitchen.
horizontal boards of
That's
some sort?
horizontal siding. It'd be like a siding wall is what it'll look like.
Okay, so
basically.
there's a wall here.
Between these two columns is the wall you're looking at there.
Okay, and basically you took off a part of the square footage of the house
That is correct.
here.
We reduced the house to get that square footage. out
Okay,
of
so
there.
this now becomes exterior deck.
That
This
is
is uncovered.
That is correct.
This is,
That's uncovered also.
but it has a
We'll
lattice.
do the same, we'll do the same cable and canvas option there so you get some shade structure if you need it.
And that's what's showing up on the roof plan, which is, which sheet?
Right, it's just the next one back, right there.
So
That's the
it's
area
that.
that
So
falls in the
there's,
center.
there's going to be some kind of cloth on cable system
Yes.
here,
There.
here, and
And there
here.
and there, correct.
Okay.
Now, how the square footage, when it came down, we're talking about that, the decks themselves, they came down in square footage. The original one was 2,023 square feet. We're now at the 1,643. And that happened in a number of ways because one of the things you addressed was square footage in the FAR. So I revamped the plan just here, there, and everywhere. It's kind of hard to
All
identify
right,
specifics.
and so now you're at 85%.
Yes.
Okay.
And that pushing and shoving this room back, which reduced that square footage, and likewise, the bottom came in with it, so that's kind of how the square footages came out.
That's why it's a different scale.
Pardon? These should be the same scale, these two levels.
This is your upper deck here.
Yeah, actually, it's the dotted line. If you followed,
okay.
there'd be a
That's what I'm
5-foot dotted line around there, which is the overhang.
Got it. That's the deck. That's the deck.
That's the actual edge of the deck where the railing is.
The floor, it's just the floor.
Okay. So just so I go through this list that we gave you, you've given us the elevations so we could understand the geometry. You've got the elevations and the existing on the same pages so we could see that contrast between existing and proposed. You've got the square footage on the drawings now, the decks. We asked you to consider reducing the overall size of the decks, and I don't recall what that was before.
Before, it was, the old deck was 2,023, and it was on the original drawings.
Okay,
It just,
and
we
so
didn't
you're down
pick
to
it
a
up on
total
it
of
when we-
1,600.
That is correct, 1,600 now.
All right. If changes are made to east and west elevation, the applicant is to identify location of windows, and I think what you shared with us is that on one of those elevations, you're not changing the window
That
at
was
all.
on this one basically changes because that becomes a door. That's the east side.
But basically,
that's
the
this
glass
door.
area is the same.
It's a little bit greater because it's a sliding door versus a window. The same location.
And
It comes
over
in.
here, it's the
That
same.
side is the side that's unchanged as far as fenestration and lower walls and roof line, except for the overhang. These overhangs have those sort of
then we
battered
have a-
breaks that are being just squared up and cut back.
And then we said we were going to stick to the issue of the decks on the side yards not being any closer than 15 feet to the property line. And I see that we still have a deck here that's within 8 feet.
Yeah, this is the existing building line. So it's kind of like if that deck is going to happen,
Understand.
it's going to be there, unfortunately. Yeah. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out here, which I think is important, and that's kind of what this blue and the red area is, that when you think about the views as it relates to this adjacent house, if you're standing out here at the edge of deck, which is the most likely to, get involved in anything, it's all about front yard. It's not about side yard. I understand the way it's written because it's the side yard, but in this particular deck, it's all about the front yard.
Okay.
It doesn't really relate to the side. And so it seems like it's a strange fit, so that's where I would like to see, if we can, to get a modification that would allow us to do that deck because it works, I think, better for the house architecturally on the front, cuts the upsize scale down, which the neighbor across the street said he loved that idea because the house all of a sudden opened up some view. So it was one of those kind of things that has good points and bad.
Okay, and then we had you restudy the front entry, which you just shared with us. Okay, that covered all the points. Do you have anything else to present?
Well, the only other thing I'd like to just mention is that, on all the rest of these decks, they're all back quite a bit. In fact, what I did was I changed in the manipulation of floor plan to get the square footage down. I removed all of the modification requirements for new building with the exception of dealing with this. The rest of the modifications just because of the setback problem, the new setback versus old. So where the new square footage was being built before, we used to have it out here. I pulled that back to make that dimension work and actually work as a deck under your design guidelines criteria. So that's the kind of thing I did. So right in here is the area that really is, other than our typical problem when the house was built before the new overlay of the
And
setbacks.
just to be clear, modifications or requests are required for here?
Yes.
For here?
Yes.
And for here?
And across the front, yes.
Okay, that's because of this line right
Yeah,
there.
that's right.
Okay. All right, anything else?
You asked to look at kind of proposal of the
colors
and that, which I think you have probably a copy of that too. Basically, it's just a soft gray kind of scheme with the kind of marine blue accent, which would be the doors. This color is actually poorly represented in this particular printing, but this is the Anderson 400 series type windows, that normal bronze they have, which is sort of a dark bronzy black almost. It's not black, but it is slightly on the warm tone. And I propose that to work in conjunction with a railing color that would be similar.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Right, anything else?
Nope, I
Okay,
think that does.
thank you. Okay, before we go to discussion of the board, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the project? There is, yes. If you'll come up, please, and you'll need to bring a yellow slip and fill that out at some point, but if you'll sit at this microphone.
You don't have to fill it out now, come up.
Yeah, and you'll just need to fill that out and hand it to staff at some point, please. If you could introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
My name is Jeannie West. I reside at 1187 Harbor Hills Drive, so I am directly adjacent to this property. And I have had the opportunity to look at the plans. One thing that I can say is I didn't realize that my property line was as close to their house as I learned through this experience, and I almost wish it weren't. I don't want more property to take care of, as strange as that sounds. The back deck that totally faces the ocean really does not impact me at all. I would have to walk around the back of my house and really look at that deck to have any kind of feeling of being imposed upon. The side deck is a new concept. I was exposed to when we met to discuss this, and it seems as though with the scaling back of the size, because that deck would be the one closest to my house, that it seems acceptable.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Did we get any written correspondence, Katie?
No, Mr. Chair, we did not.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions?
I have no questions.
I have no questions.
Other questions? I have a question. Let's go back to the roof plan. On the cable and canvas. Roof plan was on what sheet?
It's next to the last page, I think.
13?
Yeah.
What are you, the cables are going to run which way? What do you?
They would run this direction so that you can pull them back.
So you'll have cable lines running like that?
Yeah, right, you got it. Mhm. And then that way canvas could collect back against the house at the eave line.
And the same thing
And the
over
same
here.
thing there, and the same thing there, yeah.
Okay. So the canvases will curl up to the correct.
Right, and they would be done on small pleats, so basically when you look at it more or less straight on from the front, you wouldn't even notice the canvas because it would be collecting in the depth of the beams.
And then the back end elevation. So are you thinking these are like 4x4 posts? What do you, I know you showed us a picture.
Well, no, I think,
Are you gonna-
at this point, I think where I end up is the example I showed you here is
So you're
probably
gonna-
where I'm going to go, is go just for the simple metal, the very
Metal,
small,
okay.
the very small wood top and the cable.
Okay.
So this
they
would be
won't-
the system. They wouldn't be
won't-
thick like
They
that.
won't be kind of thick like
They'll be
your-
thin. They'll be thinner, yes.
And so this piece here is a wood fascia?
That is a wood fascia,
And
yes.
that's
And
gonna
that would
be-
be your,
It's 18 inches deep?
yeah.
Okay.
And that would be the same material as we're using on all of the box beam forms
And
and
then
so
what,
forth.
so the roofing is actually asphalt shingles?
Asphalt shingles, yes.
Okay. 'Cause this is, excuse me, kind of rendered as wood shingles. I mean, you've got the cedar shapes, looks like. Okay, but it is really asphalt shingles.
That is correct.
And the fascia is white again?
The fascia is
Can you
white.
Put that over here for a second. Thank you. So, okay, so the fascia is, so that is white.
right?
And any gutter downspouts?
They would all be white.
White?
And it would be white trim, any corner trim, so it would be white, and then we'd be gray on the siding
Okay, and
and gray on stucco.
the siding is lap siding, hardy
Yes,
shaped
it's the
lap-
hardy.
lap siding?
Right.
Okay, and then what have you thought about in terms of the material of the deck and the steps?
All of this in here would be CMU because there's a planter and
Mm-hmm.
so that's going to be plastered to match the color, match the plaster that happens elsewhere on the house.
Okay.
So that'll be the gray like this.
Okay, what
And
about the material on the deck and
this-
the stairs, top of the stairs?
Oh, the top deck
Yeah,
material?
what's the deck material?
Wood. I shouldn't say real wood, but your Trek deck type wood.
Okay, and so that'll occur on the
And that'll occur on the stairs as well. Yeah.
Okay. And have you thought about lighting yet?
Yeah, lighting basically on the outside and the back is going to be minuscule and all down lights. All dark sky. When I have to put one in the door, for code, would be a dark sky type bracket. But most all of them would be either up in the soffits here, and or in this overhang of the roof on the lower level to create the lighting that would. So it's all lighting the deck surfaces, not shooting out.
Okay. All right, other questions? Okay, let's go to comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate what your renderings. I think they clearly delineate and express everything you were trying to. And that I do. That your delineations are really clear, and I appreciate the comparison with the existing. So I feel very much more comfortable in my determinations. To me, it looks like you're doing a huge improvement to the home. I appreciate the fact that a neighbor came by to comment about the deck.
Yep.
And so I'm very comfortable in approving, supporting this project. I think it's goes well with our guidelines. Thank you.
Comments?
I also appreciate and reiterate what Mr. Miller has said, but I would like a little bit more detailed in lighting, deck lighting, showing where they're located.
I could do a
Showing
diagram that would show you where the light fixtures, the cans would be located.
In your finished
and where the
project.
brackets would go.
Yeah,
That's not a problem.
in your finished drawings to delineate that a little bit more, to give us where the lights are and.
I can
what-
give you cut sheets on the
And
fixtures.
cut sheets.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate Janine West coming by because that's the one question I had. Would your neighbor object to it? And I was going to ask, had you talked with her? And obviously you did, and she has no problem with it. I don't have any problem with it now either. That closeness of that deck that was added when the buildings were made smaller on the second floor there.
Okay. Other comments? Well, I'm going to be on the opposite side of the camp.
Okay.
Okay. And I was concerned about the size of this deck. I still have some concern, but I could buy off on it. Ms. West did appear today. One thing I didn't say is I know her. I've been in this house because I served on a committee with the church. But irregardless of that, I can't approve that deck. Okay. This piece is a no-no because it puts a deck out into the front yard. And that means everybody else in town's want to. It sets a bad precedent. The issue is not so much that it's the deck like this deck. It's the activity that occurs out here. You've got barbecuing, you've got noise, you've got lights, et cetera. They've got plenty of places to do that over here, including the barbecue piece. They can do that over here. I think this should, if they're intending to get down to the 85%, which he's done by cutting the square footage back, this just needs to be a roof over the garage. I can't accept, and our guidelines require 15 feet, and just because the bottom half of this house is where it is, so be it. But this should be a roof. I don't think we should have a deck out here at all.
Did we ask him further?
Because this is different. This is different than what he showed us last time. So
Right. Did we ask him to, obviously the decks are there, are they decks there because you have space to put them, because you removed the second floor?
Yes, and it's also to the advantage of the homeowner from the standpoint of, if you're familiar with the site, I know most of you guys went out there and saw that, is this is really a morning deck, is really what this is, because this faces east right down to the harbor.
Correct, yeah.
So this is a great place to be able to sit outside in nice weather. Right now, that wall's there, and there's a big plate glass window. We could go right back to that. I could add this square footage back into the house and bump the square footage, the FAR go up a little bit. It wouldn't go way out of line.
You're not hearing me. You got to stay at 85%, and I'm not going to support a deck here. It needs to be a roof. I can support everything else that's been presented. I think it's all adequate, appropriate, materials, et cetera, but I'm not going to support a deck over here.
That whole end of that whole
Whole of the
building.
house, no.
Okay.
Not going to support a deck there. I might be able to support a small deck, but no barbecue function, no food fixing, any of that stuff. But I'm just not going to support it in this relationship because we don't know who this owner is going to be in the future. Okay? And we don't know who this owner will be in the future. I mean, nobody says that this owner is going to be here forever, and neither does this owner. We have to look at, once these things are built, they're here for a very long time. And that's why we have a 15-foot guideline in our guidelines about having decks 15 feet away from the property line. So I can't support a deck over here.
Let me ask a question so I make sure I understand. You're saying 15 away from the side or from all property lines?
Property line.
If you look at our guidelines, it says 15 feet. So if you do that, is this 1/8 inch square? That's 15 feet.
Right.
Okay.
So where I guess where I'm asking you is then that if I was to take this area here and I looked at that area still as a small deck and/or modify the square footage a little to preserve a morning deck there for them.
I might be able to buy that, but I'm not going to buy anything in here in the 15 feet.
Okay, and that criteria was, my question was, that criteria you're telling me is for a side yard, not for the front yard?
It's for a side yard, and it's for every yard, as far as I read the deal.
Okay.
This is a side yard, by definition. And
I think
we're
you
going to
could
have to
probably-
be in a position to support a modification, and I'm not there yet.
Okay.
This needs to be not a deck.
I think you could, I'm either way. I don't mind the deck, because I don't mind the deck, but I think you could also get that deck there and use that morning sun to provide a deck that's not so active as the decks you have proposed.
Well, I don't see that as an active deck, to be honest
With
with
a
you.
barbecue and a
The barbecue
and
is
the
an area
covers
that's screened.
and
Well, the
and
barbecue,
size-
the sink,
and the
and all
size
that
of the
stuff
deck,
needs to be
size
out
of the
there.
decks and the barbecue and the screening, that dictates a really active deck at some point during the life of the house, the party that happens there.
So that's my comments.
Okay.
Are there other comments?
Well, yeah, I want to add to your comment. If they were, that part that's screened, if you were to pull that, well, the existing house is there right now, right?
Yes, I'm proposing cutting that back about 12 feet. So that that area becomes more open, less impacting on Uni's
I guess what the uncomfort, the issue is that the issue is the fact that you have a sink there and a barbecue. You're not contagious, are you?
No. I was last Monday. I'm working
Okay.
hard at trying to
All right.
stop the coffee.
Just check. Maybe perhaps, I think if you've pulled it back 15 feet for the deck part and the, not make it, remove the sink so there's not an activity center on that particular location, it would be more appropriate. So I don't know, I see you've got an outside fireplace there. If you pull that back 15 feet,
Let me ask this question, so because I know my client, and we've had many discussions about this, of course.
Yeah.
When it comes to we got right on, and I was surprised when it hit 85. I mean, it hit the numbers straight on when I did it, which was not always the way it usually goes together. But anyway, if we were slightly more than 85, and we went ahead and kept that square footage and left the house alone, what's wrong with that?
You're against our guidelines, when our guidelines definitely say no decks closer.
No, I'm not saying no.
leave it as a house.
I'm saying leave it the house, leave it the way it is.
But that would actually probably look less attractive.
What's that?
But that's.
Sorry,
I don't-
I'm not, sorry, say it
What
again
I'm
so I
saying
can
is,
follow
if
you.
I go ahead, yeah.
Time out. Okay? The discussion is to the board now, okay?
Yeah.
So if you have comments, write them down. I'll let you talk about your comments, but the discussion is to us now.
Well, this is a structure there existing now.
Right,
And
existing
he's
now.
just saying leave it alone. But if
Okay,
it
he
leaves
wants to leave it alone.
it-
Leave it alone
it-
is fine with me.
Then it increases the FAR.
Increase the FAR, but I think
85%.
the chairman of our board has already stated that he wants the FARs to stay at 85, which he has reached. That means he's got to lose something someplace else to retain what he took off to get to 85.
Correct.
And I'm aware of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll weigh in. I agree with upholding our 15-foot from the property line placement of the deck. And if you went ahead and did that, you'd still open up the view corridor that the building is blocking, and you just eliminate that being an activity center and call it a morning deck, you know.
I like the deck idea. I think that's a great.
I like the deck there.
But yeah, maybe the
So you're saying it's a barbecue? Is that what I'm hearing more than anything? It's the barbecue is the problem?
Well, it's
Activity deck.
yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but as a morning deck, how do you determine? when a
Take the
morning deck or
barbecue.
activity
Take the
deck
barbecue out and pull it back to 15 feet.
So I think what I hear board members saying is get this deck, you want a deck over there, get this deck back to 15 feet.
Got it.
Make that a morning deck, take that barbecue function and get it over here somewhere. Got it. Over on this side of the house.
And the deck doesn't have, we're not going to design a deck for you, but the deck doesn't have to cover the whole end
No,
of
I
the house.
understand.
You could retain some of the building back there,
Got it, okay.
if you can find to lose it someplace else.
Okay,
And that's concept.
other comments?
No, I agree about pulling the deck back. My first take on looking at this, and this is the first time I have, is it seemed like there's a lot of decks altogether, but I get the sense that the site's really steep, so obviously it's the only way you're getting any usable space. So I agree with the comment to reduce the deck on the side, but the rest of it seems like it's integrated in pretty well. So
You have to understand, we're going to have a lot of 7 and 8 foot high guys hanging around there.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But that, as I say, this owner may not be there, just like the other owners in the neighborhood. So we have to look at the structure. One thing that I would point out is the 1,200 square feet of decks, or total of 1,643, excuse me, without the 1,202 of actual decks, without this basement piece. One of the things we require under zoning is 1,250 square feet of reasonable usable space on residential lots. And somebody pointed out there's not much of that at all, except for this little strip right here. So in essence, we're allowing this applicant to have some flat space on a site that doesn't have it. So
Yeah, that's for sure.
that's in my mind, that's a justification for having that amount of square footage on this deck. But again, I'm concerned
No, I
about that
understand.
side. Okay, so if there are no further comments, can someone craft a motion to give direction to the applicant? Because he cannot proceed to the staff hearing officer for modifications until we're able to give him hopefully positive comments.
If I could just comment, you could send the project through with positive comments to the other modification requests and just not support the one modification on that side. But if you'd like to see the applicant return before you and send it on with all positive comments, you can do that.
So we could
too.
do it one of two ways.
Yeah, you could still send it forward with positive comments on the other two, and then just not on the one if you'd like.
And then a non-positive comment or comments specific so that the staff hearing officer understands our concerns about this deck.
All right, I'll take a stab at it. I would like to send this project, 1199 Harbor Hills Drive, on to the staff hearing officer with the following positive comments. The board appreciates the applicant illuminating the elevations so we can understand better exactly what's being proposed. We appreciate that the roof forms have been pulled back and that the FAR is now down to 85%. The board accepts 2 of the 3 zoning modifications. The one on the west side yard, we accept. The front modification we accept, but we do not accept the 3rd deck encroaching into the setback modification on the east side of the property. And the board recommends the applicant pull the deck back to the required 15-foot distance from that property line and remove the did we say remove the barbecue? Remove the barbecue. Period.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Further discussion to the motion?
And where would the project be returning? Back to the full board?
Yes.
Okay, back to the full board. Acceptable. Who seconded?
Brian.
Okay,
Yes.
is that acceptable? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there further discussion to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, so you can get off to the staff hearing officer.
Great, appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
I just need to keep one set. You can take the other two, or else I'll recycle them.
Okay.
All right, we're off to item number 5, 30 Skyline Circle. And Katie, do you have a
I think that's what yours.
legal requirement reading
one.
thing I'm supposed
Oh,
to
you
do?
got one? Oh, this one has your receipt stamp, if you want to have the date. That one's got your receipt.
Okay, this is a new item. I'm going to read in the item, and then I have to read a statement about Mr. Miller's participation in this presentation. This is 30 Skyline Circle. This is a proposal to construct a 194-square-foot, one-story addition to an existing one-story single residential unit. Other site improvements include an exterior shower and a new 270-square-foot wood deck. The proposed total of 1,189 square feet of development on a 9,289-square-foot lot located in the Hillside Design District is 34% of the maximum allowable floor-to-lot area ratio. Any action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. If you'll introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Brian Miller, and I am the designer of this project.
Okay. And Brian, I have to read a legal. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Miller is a member of our board, and as such, he is allowed to represent a client, but under the following conditions. The State Fair Political Practices Act, Regulation 18702.4, paragraph B, subsection 5, states that an official may appear before a design or architectural review committee of which he or she is a member to present, explain architectural engineering drawings which the official has prepared for a client. Brian Miller is a sole practitioner, is using this exception understanding certain limits regarding advocating on behalf of his clients. So, Brian, if you'll proceed to tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, this is an interesting project. It's on a very steep slope. And what the client is requesting is to add a master bedroom addition on the back of their home with a master bath, and there'll be an exterior shower located at this point, and then having a little nice deck area over here at the back of the house. So to kind of, this is the existing home. It's a very small, modest home. It was built in the 40s. Right now, there's nothing here. It's just a step down into a dirt area, and what we do is add a deck to the same floor level as the existing house and the room addition. Here we have the master bedroom and the master bath. There's a 10-foot setback line, and so I've kind of designed the wall system to kind of match. It's a kind of a funky design, so adding a shower, and this is where the water heater is. It's originally located there. We're moving it. And the elevations kind of go for what the existing house. This is your existing home, so the elevation is this. It kind of plays off the existing style of the home, and it's matching the siding, which is a wood siding. All colors are to match, and that's basically it. I kind of want to show there were some questions from the zoning regarding the heights of the walls. So this kind of clarifies a little thing. This wall here is not really a wall as kind of a retaining stone system that's been there for years, and that's kind of what that is. And you can see here, when you look at the house, this is existing, this is the front door, which is right here. So this is the existing concrete retaining wall that's put in place. This is looking down the slope. These are adjacent homes in the neighborhoods. It's, it's kind of an eclectic neighborhood. This is looking up, down at the front of the house. That's the front door. And they have some standing herb plantings there. Here's the rear of the house. Kind of shows you what's existing. That's this little. I'm sorry. This is the existing railroad tie. We're going to add a 3-foot planter in front of the railroad tie so that we don't have to put a railing there. So there's a minimum of at least 30 inches there to allow for without a railing. This is the back of the house. You can see where this double door is right here. So there's these 2 steps down onto the dirt. This kind of shows you, this is the existing water heater that we're going to move, and this is where the master bedroom addition is going to be. And here's some more pictures of the back of the house. Now this is, several questions regarding zoning about parking. If you look on the site plan, it's an interesting situation. They have no parking. All they have is street parking, and this is kind of what they have. I've asked the client to remove these signs. They're not authorized to have these no parking signs, so they will be removed. But this is the fence. There was a question that said, the zoning says 10 foot. On the street side, it's 6 feet, but if you look back on this side, behind, looking up, you can see that it's it's much taller, because the property drops almost abruptly right behind the fence.
What's the difference between the distance between the fence and that rock retaining wall?
That's the rock retaining wall, right?
This rock retaining wall is actually this thing here, and it actually kind of goes,
that.
yeah.
And where's and the fence is right
Yeah,
within
it's
about a foot
right
of
on
it.
top of it, yeah.
It's right on top.
Yeah. It's
And it's so,
this oak tree is that oak tree.
So you're asking,
who made the red marks?
That's zoning staff.
Oh, I think it was,
Okay, so shown on archives, but I can't read these words.
So it's
but in different location.
Okay, so is a 6-foot fence allowed?
So if I can just read the correction. So it says the location of the existing 6-foot tall wood fence does not match that shown on the archive plans. The archive plans show it to be 10 foot 6 inches from the front lot line. Please verify whether this is still the case. If the actual fence is located less than 10 feet from the front lot line, per the municipal code, it must either be reduced to no taller than 3.5 feet tall, or a minor zoning exception would need to be applied for.
Okay. Right, so right now, if I just scale this sketch, the closest that fence looks to be to the property line is 7.5 feet, and the furthest at this end is 14.5 feet. But a lot of it is, half of it is less than 10 feet from the property line.
are we concerned with that fence if he's not disturbing, if he's proposing an addition to his house, which is...
Well, zoning is saying he's not allowed to have a fence less than 10 feet.
So they've included this in the project.
They would have to request us to approve would we approve that, or how does that work?
If the fence is in fact located less than 10 feet and it's greater than 3.5 feet in height, we need to notice it for a minor zoning exception. So that's why we need verification. If you are going to apply for that, then we need to re-notice the project, and you'll need to approve the minor zoning exception.
Okay, and if we could do one of two things, could we say aesthetically we think it's okay where it is, but we can't do that unless it's been noticed because it's a zoning violation if it's less than 10 feet. So we can't make a comment one way or the other
You can comment
today.
on it, but we can't take action on it if they do need a minor zoning exception, because it'll need to be noticed.
Okay, and then so is that tied to our ability to do any action on this project with regards to the deck the back deck and the
It would need to
addition.
be comments only today.
So comments only. So
Yes, if they're gonna
irregardless,
apply
until
for
that
the-
fence is settled, we can't.
If they were going to reduce it to 3.5 feet in height, then that would be fine. But if they're going to keep it the way it is and it's less than 10 feet from the front lot line, then
So do you understand, Brian,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So if you agreed today to reduce it to 42 inches
Yeah.
for any portion that's closer than 10 feet, then we could act on this today.
Otherwise, you have to get a special.
Then they have to do a noticing, and then it has to come back for another hearing.
I don't know. I was hoping my client would be here to give me direction on that. I can't speak on behalf of my client. I do know it's it's been there for years.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
All
so,
right, let me have a question. There is no access, and I've walked around the site.
Yeah.
And I walked down here on the street down here.
none,
There's properties right here, and there's no access down there.
absolutely none.
Nothing here and nothing here. It's
very
a
strange property.
landlocked,
Yeah,
no ocean around it.
yeah.
All right, before we get too deep into questions, I do have to ask, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Katie, did we get any written correspondence?
no, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then the chair is going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for further questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Only for my own, and I'm asking this a lot because I'm learning a lot on these questions. It's an R1 zone property, is that correct?
The zone changed to RS 15 under the new zoning ordinance.
RS 15, which is, I don't know what that is now,
Residential zone.
residential zone, R1, or one house.
15,000
I don't understand how the zoning can just pick it apart. I'm being hung right here. Can pick it apart and decide that they want to address this issue, but they don't want to address this issue, or this issue, or this issue.
What do you mean?
Meaning there are,
It's like any other project that comes to us. If there's an existing zoning violation, then it has to be dealt with.
yeah,
And there appears to be, unless Brian's able to get a survey out there and draw this.
This is actually surveyed correctly.
Okay.
This is a trace
So,
survey.
so if that's reasonably correct,
Yes.
then they have a zoning violation, and that has to either be corrected or
but
taken care
I'm
of.
going beyond that. I'm going beyond that.
Okay.
So if there's other zoning violations,
That all would all show up at some
they
point.
would all show up. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm not going to state them, I just.
The only thing
I'm looking, oh, yes, I will. I'm looking at another unit that's on the property.
And that's okay, that's allowed.
That's allowed.
Under the
okay.
new state law, that's allowed. So if they've done the proper permitting by
Okay.
installing a bathroom and a kitchen and all that stuff, and they have a building permit, which I understand they may have, then it's
We
allowed.
have. We did get a permit.
So if that has a permit, it's done.
Okay.
So that's an interesting concept. Yeah, all parking requirements are waived when it's an ADU, so I didn't even have that as a concern.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but the only thing I could say regarding the issue with the zoning is there are other adjacent properties that have the same kind of problem where they're up against the street and they have these very tall either hedges or fences. So it's a very common aspect of the neighborhood.
But they're not in the same boat that you're in.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is it's a common attribute. So I'm leaning towards, I'm thinking that client, well, I wish he was here. I don't
It
know
would
what
be
to
a
say.
shame.
I have one other question.
Sure.
This is the same property, right?
Yes.
This is the deck area we're talking about.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
This is the area where the addition is going to go.
Yes.
What is that right there?
That is a little shed that they have to remove.
Okay, so that's another zoning thing that has to get taken care of.
Right.
Okay. That doesn't show on this drawing. So
Correct.
there's
It's
a
right
zoning.
there and it's going to be taken out.
So that
I told
zoning
them that.
thing has to be on this drawing showing to be removed. Now, Brian could, if he wanted to, or if his client proposed, he could say, look, I'll just make this fence, I'll make the comply. Otherwise, he has to come back and deal with it. Okay?
So as a question, what are the requirements for me to come back and deal with it? What do I have to do?
That's Kate.
So it would require a mailed noticing, so, because basically what the minor zoning exceptions are is previously there were modification requests, and so now the board has the ability to grant the approvals for these requests, so it just needs to be done at a public hearing. So we would need to notice the item for that specific request, and then the board could grant approval at the hearing.
So all we can do today, given where you are, is make comments on what you've presented. But we
Unfortunately, yeah.
can't take an action.
Unfortunately, I cannot speak on behalf of my client, so I don't know, I can't make that
So maybe you just want to come for comments
Just
today.
for
and then-
comments.
Okay,
Just for
so
comments.
I would encourage my fellow board members to do is to give him comments, positive or negatively, for what he's presented today, and then he'll have to come back to be in a position to be able to request a formal approval of project design approval, which he's not able to do today.
Well, let's look at the elevations again. Just to, so I can negatively tell you what I don't like about it.
Oops, so let's take that, set that aside, right? Okay, all right. So, Mr. Motisha.
Flat roofed? Is it flat roofed?
It's a slight slope.
Just a slight, just a slight.
Kind of a play with the existing.
I think it's fine. I don't have any questions. I've been up there, I looked over, kind of peeked over the fence, and it's a very small, barely 1,000, barely maybe 900 square feet in the house. And
Remind me again, these are there, right?
Yeah.
And that's there?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the kitchen, yeah. And the reason the railing stops is I've got a planter in the front here.
Right,
so that
you're bringing it, okay, I understand. Okay. Other comments or questions? I think this is perfectly acceptable, and I assume when it comes back, we'll give it project design approval. However, I hear your argument about that lane up there in terms of the fence, and I really can't support the fence the way it's built now.
So you're requesting it be 42 inches?
Well, either that, or you come up with a different approach. Maybe it's a combination of a hedge and a different design fence, but the fence is too obtrusive on that street.
Okay.
If I look at that street as I come around the corner, and I know the photographs you just showed me,
Right.
there isn't another big 6-foot fence sitting right up on the paving. And I think it needs some softening. It could have a little bit of a planter in front of it. I think there's an opportunity to perhaps lower the section that's close to the where the gate entry is for the steps to go down. Maybe they could have a little entry trellis or something, but it's too stark.
Okay.
And it's not compatible, in my view, with the neighborhood. So I'm hoping when you come back, and if he wants to retain the fence in some fashion, you come back with a design that might get you there. But I think the rest of it's fine. The only other thing I might suggest, and I know your client's probably on a tight budget, given these doors coming out of the master bedroom,
Yes.
somehow getting a little weather something so that just having lived with those in my master bedroom, when the rain comes and where this site is, the rains come just that way and he's going to get horizontal
Sure.
rain. So maybe there's a little way to put a eyebrow over it or something.
Okay.
Other comments?
I didn't get to comment on it, but I was just saying, I like the way you designed the deck with the planter in front of it. I think that's a clever way of getting around having to, wrap the whole thing with a railing. So
Well, thank you.
I support it. I like the way you did the addition. So
I didn't even see this. I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's
Not
amazing.
supposed to.
Not supposed to.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, then we should give the applicant comments in any direction. And obviously, given Katie's zoning information, we're assuming it will return to the full board, correct, Katie?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, Chair would look for a motion.
The board would like to give this project positive comments regarding the master bedroom addition and the addition of the planter outside the deck to mitigate the railing problem. We would encourage you to restudy the zoning modification of the overheight fence along the front, encroaching into the front property setback, and return to us when?
When it's able to be scheduled with
Okay.
staff.
Would you know by The 29th?
Yes.
Okay, then we can
September?
continue, no, of November.
Yeah.
Then we can continue it 2 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks
Okay,
to the full board.
okay, that's your motion?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion to the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstention, so carried. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We're going to go to another new item, item number 6, 1616 La Cornelia Drive. This is a new item. Applicants come forward, please. Just so you can introduce yourself, please.
Cat McConnell, owner. Cat McConnell, owner.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Stoutenborough, the architect.
Okay, thank you. This is a new item, so I'm going to read into the record the project description. This is a proposal to construct a 270 square foot, one-story addition and alterations to an existing 2,190 square foot single residential unit. The proposed project includes the demolition of an existing bedroom, addition of a new master suite, and a remodel of the kitchen and laundry room. Other site improvements excuse me, include new patio areas, new guardrails, and an exterior spiral staircase to an existing roof deck, and removal of a 16-inch magnolia tree in the rear yard. The proposed project also includes replacing the entire roof with a Class A metal roofing and adding a roof trellis element at the front entry. The proposed total of 2,460 square feet of development on a 10,000 square foot lot located in the Hillside Design District is 66% of the maximum allowable floor to lot area ratio. Project will address violations in zoning information report ZIR 2014-00352. Any action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. So if you could share with us what you're doing, please.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a tract home built in 1960. It has had an addition sometime in the past. We don't know when. There was nothing in the file. In 2007, it was remodeled, and a new roof was put on it. Lightweight concrete tile, Permatech, we think. There's, you recognize it?
Well, they're all out of business. I know that.
They're all bankrupt.
Yeah.
So the roof has been damaged, so we will be replacing it
In
completely.
my house, it breaks.
Yeah. The problem, I think, was that because there is the roof deck and there's no barrier between the roof deck and the roof, that the renters, it was a rental unit for a number of years, used to walk on the roof because the truly stellar view is from the garage roof. You can see all the way up to Point Concepcion, Coal Oil. So people were apparently walking on the roof with great regularity, and the roof, when we bought the house, was leaking in several places. So what we are hoping to do is this is the footprint of the existing bedroom, is to demo this bedroom and add a new master bedroom in this area. This is an odd little prefab metal sun porch, sun room that was added at some time in the past. That's what I can't find in the archives. And we hope to remove that and bring up to code. Also stepping it back in slightly to bring it within the setback. I think it's slightly over the setback at the moment. So Yeah, at some point, somebody stuccoed the outside and sheetrocked the inside, but it's a little metal greenhouse. So we'll be replacing the roof. We will be redoing the deck guardrails and the staircase.
That's what you're adding.
This is this gray area here is what is not currently footprint. This is currently footprint, actually here. We'll be stepping this wall back in and making this addition.
So where is the existing house now?
It's more clear on the demolition plan, perhaps.
This is the sunroom.
Okay. What's very helpful is when you're trying to show this is put it on the top so we understand what's going on.
Okay.
So the existing house line is here?
The existing house line is here.
Okay, so it's out here somewhere,
Yes, it
something
is.
like that.
It's
Okay.
in the setback.
Okay, and that's what you're tearing down and moving back in?
Right.
Okay, that's the way
A little
typically-
easier to understand.
Yeah, the way they typically do that is just show a dash
Okay.
so we know where it is. Okay. All right. That's the details. So this is new?
This would be new. This would be a fish kitchen outside on the existing patio.
Okay, and the spiral staircase doesn't exist today?
No, the spiral staircase exists. It's been currently taken down to keep people from walking on the roof.
Okay, but it's physically not there now?
It is physically not there.
Okay, and this deck is there?
The deck is there.
And so what does this all look like? All right, so it's going up to here. That's up to here. Do we have a section through here somewhere?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so the deck is going to come here, then there's some kind of,
Barrier to keep people
okay,
from
so
walking onto the roof.
that's stucco of some sort?
Yes,
Okay, and then the roof will be reshaped, cricketed, so the water gets out on both sides.
correct.
So the deck is essentially at the top of the sill of the first floor. Okay, so it's not up on the second floor. That's what
No.
I couldn't understand. What was
I know, but the city documents refer to it as a roof deck, so I'm trying to keep my
Okay, and just,
language the same.
okay. And right now, there's nothing there, correct?
Right now, there's the deck, but the guardrail and the stair have been taken down.
So this deck is there now?
Yes,
Okay. And that's what I could see from across the canyon? Okay, I
Yes.
understand that. Okay. And so what's new and what's old on these elevations?
this will be the new master bedroom here.
So these are all new windows?
These are doors and windows, yes.
Okay. That's new? or
The
Let's just,
chimney,
let's just do one elevation at a time.
Okay.
So is that a new window?
yes, that is a new window.
That's existing.
That's existing,
This is new.
yes,
This existing deck, but new railing and a new spiral staircase to replace the old one.
yes,
Then we have an existing window,
yes.
okay, and a new,
And a new fireplace chimney stack.
okay, but the fireplace element's there already.
The fireplace element is currently on a different wall, and we are
So this is a whole new fireplace.
being shifted over from a different
Okay,
wall.
that's what I'm trying to understand, okay. So that's new replacement, existing.
Existing.
This is new.
Yes,
This is new? This little shed over this door?
It's, like you mentioned on the last item, it's just a cover over an existing door.
brow over these.
Right, but
so
is
it's
that a
new.
new
It
piece?
is new,
That's new?
Yes.
But the door is existing?
Right.
yes.
Okay, that's new, okay. And so that is over here, but I don't see it on this drawing. Is it sticking out like this? right? If I'm standing here looking that
Yes.
way, I'm going to see this.
You will see the edge of it, yes.
So there's going to be something that looks like that, right? With
Yes.
a post on it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then come around, this is existing, that's existing, and then there was a mention of a new trellis element.
Right here.
Okay, and that's, here's a photograph of the front of the house right now.
Yes. You have it in your,
Right there.
So right now, there is a cover roof that drops over that front door. This appears to be now being pulled back.
slightly.
And then what does this look like?
This is a decorative trellis.
Okay, do I have a section or any drawing that shows me what that might look like?
This section.
Where are we at?
4x4 trellis and roof.
No, that's not it. Right here. Okay, sheet A8. Okay, so you're cutting this back, and you have a little trellis that comes out like that, and that's sitting on what? Does it have a support
Yes, there's a beam.
underneath these guys or above these guys?
There's a beam that it ties into, it ties into in the back.
I understand that, but if I look at this, is there anything supporting this end that's out?
There's an angle on the front. That's the.
Oh, that's this
the
little
two
angle right here.
Yeah, the two detail bubbles are there
Okay.
for when we
So,
detail that.
so this is going to appear floating.
Yes.
And this little angle is going to hold that piece up, and there's going to be a bracket at each side holding that angle up. Okay. All right. So that changes. This is all the same. This is all the same. However, on your rendering on the front, there appear to be. And oops, all the way back to here. There is some kind of trellis thing. So what's going on here? Is that happening or not?
Yes, these are rain barrels
Yeah.
to prevent any water from moving off the property. It doesn't absolutely have to.
Okay, so
And
that's-
this is a screen to hide the rain barrels from the street.
These are on the front.
Okay, and so there's going to be some kind of gutter downspout system that gets water into these rain barrels,
Yes.
which doesn't show on this drawing. Okay, and it doesn't show on this one.
No, we don't show any of the gutters and
Okay, so,
downspouts
all
yet.
right, so that's not here.
Do you need the gutter detail on the plans?
Yeah, we're going to need all this stuff, but I'm
Okay.
just trying to go through and understand what you have. Okay, so the garage door is staying the same?
Yes.
Okay, and that, we talked about that side, we went through this side. This side, these appear to be all new windows? New doors, correct? This is the side, or
This is
that's this side, towards the magnolia tree.
these are new.
So that's all new. Everything's new here, and a new grill, louvers for the attic venting is here.
That's correct.
What is that?
That is the existing water heater.
Okay, is that in the setback? No.
Yes, it is, and it has a waiver.
Katie, do we know that it has a waiver? There is a water heater in the setback. Water heaters generally aren't allowed in the setback, so do
On the
they have them?
west- on the
Do
west
they have a,
I think
was-
like the
Classification.
garage, it's existing non-conforming.
here's a water heater right here,
That's inside or outside of the setback.
because the setback is
No,
what?
it's in the setback.
It's in the setback, but
So do they have to get a modification for that?
Let
Do
me
they have
double
one?
check.
the zoning noted that that a waiver was applied and approved for that.
It's called a modification.
Okay?
And so that's what we're trying to determine. Okay. All right, so we're back to there, we got all of that cleaned up. These are existing, correct? No,
No,
so those are new,
those will be new.
so that's not noted on this drawing. Okay, so these are new, those are new, they're gonna go up in here and over here, okay?
Details.
Okay, and you've got gable in here, are you gonna need vents up here too? No, taken care of by that?
This is a volume ceiling.
Okay, that's a volume ceiling, so this is gonna have icing and there's some other insulation material to hold it all in, okay. All right, and then,
And of course, these are new.
it's the venting, okay, so that's how he's doing that one. Okay, and then, all Are you intending to more or less keep the same colors of the house, or what's your?
Exact same color.
What's the color of the roof you're proposing?
It is a metal roof of a gray to silver color.
Okay, so we don't have a color yet, okay.
I have a sample.
Okay,
That is the La Habra 34 San Simeon for the stucco. That is the doors and windows.
and that's what's there now?
That is what's there now.
Okay. Right. Okay, anything else to present?
I have.
Oh, show
There's
us where the
another-
magnolia tree is that you want to take down.
It is here. Thank you. You're welcome. It is here. It is on the property line with the neighbors, and it is beginning to disrupt their retaining wall. Their property is a good 6 feet lower than my property, and he has requested that as part of this, I remove it so it doesn't create problems for his retaining wall.
Okay. Got the roof part, staircase, laundry room, patios. So from landscaping, is this all new? Is that
Yes.
what we're seeing here, that's all new?
This is existing concrete and sandstone walkway.
And that's going to stay?
And no, we're taking it out and replacing it with.
Permeable pavers?
Yes.
Okay, and this is new?
This is also, well, it'll be coming out. There was a patio here
Okay,
at one
so-
point.
but- So all of this in the
All
dark
this is new.
That's new. And is there any landscape changes out here? No?
No.
That's all existing?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
The other zoning issue is a fountain
Which is where?
on this wall here. And that is going to be removed and the wall repaired.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Katie, did we get any written correspondence?
No, Mr. Chair, we did not.
Thank you. Okay, then the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for additional questions. Who has questions?
I do.
Yes.
On A2, I'm looking at your proposed green screen, living screen to hide the rain barrels in the front, and I'm wondering what that looks like, the living screen, and also wondering why you chose to put those rain barrels in the front, and if there's any way to put them around the side, stack them with the other two you have there. Yeah.
We could certainly attempt to squeeze them all in on the side. It might create some challenge with gutter loads, but we could certainly do that. We put them in the front because we felt like that was going to be where a large amount of water was going to be shed. I currently have 2 rain barrels in the back that, depending upon what we do here, I hope to relocate in the back also. But the green screen, what we were assuming was a frame trellis with vinage.
Okay. Other questions? The new chimney cap, is that something your architect is designing, or is that an off-the-shelf product?
That is a custom piece the architect is designing.
Okay. And it's, I'm assuming, metal of some sort?
Yes.
Okay. And it will have a color similar to the other metal colors that
The
you're?
roof, yes, it'll be stainless.
I think we're assuming that everything we mentioned to you will be, again, detailed on the drawings and shown on the
At some
drawings.
point, yeah.
I'm assuming I'm getting very excellent notes taken right here.
Okay.
And I'll make a comment also on your color. We need a color board, so take it out of the envelope, mount it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of board, and label each color so
Sure.
so you can then give it to.
Okay. Other questions?
Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
on the mechanical equipment, it looks like it's okay per the new zoning ordinance. On lots developed with residential uses only, freestanding equipment and enclosure shall be no closer than 10 feet to any front lot line and no closer than 5 feet to any interior lot line adjacent to property zoned for residential use. So it's at least 5
Okay,
feet.
so under the new zoning that just
It
went
looks
into
okay.
effect, okay, thank you.
Changes.
Okay. Okay. If there are no further questions, let's go to comments. Who has comments? Lisa?
If it was up to me, I think I'd choose to hide the rain barrels and make a more decorative statement in the front, but
With art or landscaping against the building?
yeah, but that's purely subjective.
I think the world is changing. You don't have water heaters anymore. You might be able to eliminate that water heater by putting a
Tankless.
tankless.
I'm certainly talking to the contractor about that possibility.
And mounting it and putting it anywhere, and it can be out. Did we decide it was still in the setback?
It's okay.
It's
It's
okay.
allowed under the new zoning code.
Okay.
That changed from about 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago now.
You would.
So just to clarify then, a new tankless
It
external
would-
wall mounted
is
would go
fine.
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's different specifications if it's a certain height off the ground, but it would be allowed.
Yeah, you just need to check that out. Well,
I have a comment. real
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead.
Is the standing metal seam roof, is that what you're planning?
Yes, it is.
All right.
The recent Lompoc 4.3 earthquake
Yes.
was felt very strongly at this address. It was almost 11-second rolling event. And it really reinforced my decision to go with a lightweight, fireproof metal roof.
Fascinating.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to go with my comments. I'm not going to support a standing seam roof in this neighborhood on this house. It can be seen from several points. I took the time to go right on the opposite hill where the condos are and TV Hill and looking back at all these homes lining up. Then I went down that street. And again, you know, this is a neighborhood in transition, but I think this is, you probably weren't here earlier for my earlier comments earlier in the afternoon, but I think this is a neighborhood that should not support standing seam metal roofs. I think there's other material that can be done, but this is not appropriate. It can be seen all over from several points well beyond the neighborhood. So I'm not going to be supporting that. I will be supporting the other elements that they're proposing. I would encouraging, yes, to rethink the rain barrels. I understand precisely what you're trying to do, but the mechanics of actually getting it accomplished, and I'm going back to the elevation, unless you want to try to bury all of the downspout and feeding elements into those rain barrels inside your walls, which I wouldn't recommend, I don't think that's going to be really resolvable, even with a screen in the front of the house. I think it's going to be a real challenge to try to get, you've done, the house is so nicely done in the rest of the front that trying to get that accomplished in the front of the house, given the geometry of downspouts and feeding pipes and everything else you have to get into those rain barrels, is going to be a real challenge. So I would encourage you to look at another avenue to deal with that. The other thing, a lot of it is just the detailing when you come back. Certainly getting this thing appropriate. One of my questions, if you put that in, are you still within
Yes.
the setback? Okay, so you've got plenty of room on
There's a
that
little
side.
side patio.
Yeah, you've got plenty of room to do that, so you're okay there. And I think the railings, et cetera, on the other side are perfectly fine. I question how you're really going to pull this off, so I'm going to be very interested in a section and a detail there about how that's really going to happen. One of the things that happens in terms of maintenance, if you have these as exposed outriggers, the tops of those pieces of wood are going to be exposed to deterioration over time. You may want to cover those or cap those with copper or some other material to increase the ability to keep those maintained without, it happens all over the place when we have all these little outriggers. And what you'll find, if you'll notice, a lot of people will come in here and put a little sheet metal cap and paint it, or they'll put a copper cap or some other material, because otherwise that's constantly exposed to the weather and the rain.
Can I make a comment on that entry?
Yeah.
You commented that you maybe something was floating up there. That heavy beam there, I'm looking at it right now. It needs more work because it doesn't look like it's floating. It will not look like it's floating if you're looking at it right now and you see that heavy beam that's cut that porch right in half.
It's kind of incongruent with all the other things that are happening.
It
doesn't quite work with everything else you're doing in the house.
I mean, it's nice to have a more light in your entry, and that's probably what you're trying to do. But
It was an aesthetic thing. There's a house down the street that has the similar.
It may be the way it's rendered right now. Okay, yeah, that's the house down the street. Okay, it's not rendered in a way we can read it. So
this is different. It's a different architecture too. It's
So-
more of a modern.
And that's what we're trying to attach,
So
some kind of
you're-
a style to a styleless
Right,
house.
but you're
Might come up with
mixing
some
language
different
here.
ideas.
So that may be a challenge. So it may be the way you rendered it, but right now it's not reading properly. So those are my comments. I can understand now why the magnolia tree has to go. I think that's unfortunate.
It is. It's a beautiful tree.
It's a beautiful tree. It adds to the skyline. Hopefully you can think about reintroducing something else.
Something over here that won't threaten my neighbor's retaining wall.
It's unfortunate. It's right on the property line.
How about some landscaping?
Propose some new planting there potentially? I don't know.
Well, one of my questions to my landscape colleagues on the board is, do we require a landscape plan for at least this piece? It's up to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would make a comment that it would be nice to see some planting around this new flagstone patio area back here. I mean, I would hope that would be kind of a part of improving the outside of the house. Another comment regarding the rain barrels is, you might look, they sell like rectangular style barrels that you can mount up against the house that
It's called a water wall.
Yeah, so then you
Yes.
can hold more volume and it doesn't take up as much space is kind of how you've drawn them. So you might look at that, maybe you can kind of focus more water storage on just that one wall back there. But to me, it seems like this whole patio space back here could be broken up with maybe a tree or some planting or something. Just kind of soften it up a little bit. But yeah, I'd like to see a landscape plan as part of it.
Is this uncovered park or patio right now? All that right there and this right here?
This is the roof line,
Roof
and
line,
this is
yeah.
all uncovered.
So that's just a roof line hanging over into that uncovered, and the deck is right there.
Correct.
Okay.
Katie, I do have one procedural question. It says that there's zoning violations that have to be taken care of. Do we?
Those are being addressed as part of the project.
And are they any of those affect the exterior elements that we have to look at? Are they in interior zoning?
It is.
I believe
It
it's
is
just
the
the fountain.
fountain and the hedge height.
In the hedge height?
Hedge height
Oh, this hedge?
and this.
Okay, so that's important information. So what's the zoning violation with the hedge?
It is too tall.
And is it all on your property?
No, the majority of it is on the neighbor's property. It's the neighbor's hedge.
Okay, so how does that
So
work?
they'll be required to maintain their portion of the hedge at 8 feet, and then
Okay,
the other
Are you
neighbor-
agreeable to that?
Yes.
At 8 feet, okay.
The hedge
And
does this.
and so it's just this hedge on here?
It is.
in the other one.
And this
And
one
this
has
one, okay.
already been remediated.
Okay, and so when we make our determinations at whatever point we do that, do we have to address the hedge issue?
No, because those are just zoning violations. They're not asking for any sort of exceptions.
Okay, so we don't have to deal with that. So those are the issues in the zoning report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right,
That's the front. Front is only the.
all right. So,
Side.
but under the new zoning code, that goes away. We don't have to do that anymore, correct?
Sorry?
You know, under the old discussions, you see this piece of garage here is beyond the setbacks. So they don't require modification now?
It's an existing non-conforming.
Existing
They're not
non-conforming.
adding to that space.
That's how it's being handled.
That would always have been.
But if they add this little trellis element in the front, would that trigger something? No? Yes?
I think the trellis element's okay.
Okay, anyway, that's something you need to make sure we're clear on. Okay. All right, are there other comments? Excuse me. Okay, then the chair would look for a motion. We can either give this project design approval with comments. We could give it comments only, requesting that the applicant return. We could give it project design approval without comments. There's probably not sufficient information here to give it anything other than that.
I'll take a stab at it. I would like to, the board would like to have it returned to us, to the full board.
With comments?
So we spend, yes, with comments, okay. We'll start going around the house.
You want the elevation?
Yeah. Page A6, elevations, south elevation. Study entry trellis, just study. And include the overhang on your north, east elevation, which is shown on east elevation, show it on the south elevation. Give us a detail of your new fireplace cap. That's all that's shown there. And details of everything that we've talked about. North elevation. I think we've made it clear that we will not accept a metal roof. A study and bring back another proposal of different material on the roof. Make sure you show all downspouts, all gutters and downspouts throughout the whole house and where they go to, barrels and or details again of any vents you're putting in the roofs here and here. Okay.
Site plan?
Site plan. Kind of superimpose on your site plan or your floor plans, what you're demoing and what you're saving, so we can see the two together without having to flip back and forth. Do a re-thought of your barrels in the front. Yeah, and I'll bring back a landscape, a preliminary or a landscape plan involving landscaping in just this area, just to the around the garage, around the west. Well, yeah, west side of the house, and then the northwest side of the house, showing landscaping and hardscape. Because this is there, but if we don't have it more detailed, you're going to do what you want to, and you're going to say, well, there it is. Well, it's not there yet. And we approve the removal of the tree, magnolia tree. Setbacks, and come up with a proposal for a water heater. You can leave it there if you want. It'd be nice if it was different. That's my.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Okay. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a second to the motion. Any further discussion to the motion? additional comment.
There are no setback, no
Yeah, no,
problems
they're,
with
they're okay with that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think you probably covered everything. Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. And it'll come back to the full board,
Full
correct?
board.
Full board. So you'll need to work with staff to schedule your return to, okay, thank you.
So I'll just keep one set and you can keep the other two. Otherwise,
Okay.
May I quickly
Yes.
ask for some guidance on the roof material? Because we looked at a number of concrete tiles that would be attractive and things of that nature, but they weigh so much they will require complete reconstruction of the...
Asphalt shingle roofs are perfectly
Fine.
acceptable. Okay. Our next item is scheduled for exactly 6 o'clock, but we've been here for several hours now, so I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess. We'll return in 5 minutes.
Lines on your face don't bother me. Down in my chair as you dance over me. Ooh, I can't help myself. I've got to see you again. Late in the night when I'm all alone, I look at the clock and I know you're not home. I can't help myself. I've got to see you again. I could almost go there just to watch you be seen. I could almost go there just to live in a dream. But oh, I won't go to share you with him. No, even though I know just where you've been. No, I can't help myself. I've got to see you again. I could almost go there just to watch you be seen. Oh, I could almost go there just to live in a dream. My love, I won't go far any of those things. To not touch your skin is not why I sing. Oh, no, no, I can't help myself. I've got to glad to see you again.
November 27th, 2017 Single Family Design Board. We're at item number 7, 1554 Alameda Padre Serra. This is a new item. I'm going to read the project description into the record. This is a proposal to request a minor zoning exception to allow hedges along the interior and rear setbacks to grow up to 14 feet tall. There are no proposed alterations to the existing single residential unit. The proposal will address violations in the enforcement case NF 2016-01815 and zoning information report ZIR 2009-0070. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. Findings are required as outlined in Santa Barbara Municipal Code 30.245 minor zoning exceptions and Santa Barbara Municipal Code 30.140.110 point E, point 2, point A for proposed additional hedge height allowances, which you have in front of you. All right, if you could introduce yourself, please.
My name is Rochelle Malin.
Welcome. If you could share with us what you're doing.
Okay, this is for, I'm representing the clients, Mr. and Mrs. Fred Krupika. And what we're asking for is in the new minor zoning exemption from the new zoning ordinance allows for up to a 14-foot hedge. We all know that hedges have been issues for years and years in the city of Santa Barbara. So what we're asking for is allowance, and currently actually, their hedges actually, when they measured them just recently, they are approximately 13 feet in this area. So we're asking for the 14-foot allowance along this area here, along the rear, and along this side up into this planter right here. And so that's what we're looking for. So they're all interior, and of course, as we know, actually every single property that abuts this property has hedges that are 14 feet or sometimes higher, anywhere from 13 to 16 feet. And in fact, there's a partial bamboo hedge at this property to the rear of them, which is the 1741. What's the address? My mind's going blank here. It's the rear. Paterna. There we go. Thank you. Sorry. Anyway, there's a bamboo hedge here that's probably within 20 feet in height, right back in here. So that's what we're asking for. So that way, it's a privacy issue, as we know. That's a big thing with neighbors. And there's this approximately a 19 to 20% incline on the property with the house here behind them. So it looks down upon, and there's a lot of privacy issue and exposure to this house right now. I do have some photographs taken from the kitchen window that can show you part of that. This is a photograph from the kitchen window looking up at the house behind them. There's another photo here. You guys have the same. So if they were to lower that hedge, they would be exposed. Their privacy would be even more so exposed. Also, when there was a modification and a permit for the swimming pool and spa that was done in 2014, part of the criteria and requirements was that the landscaping that acts as a screen for this area remain in place, and that was one of the conditions of approval. The hedge has been here for years, and there hasn't been an issue until approximately this time last year when the neighbors had a confrontation over an excessive barking dog. And so that is what started and rolled this whole thing. The enforcement case, although I asked Colin Isles, who's the planner that represents it, said, why does it have a 2016 number to it? And he said, well, that's because that's when the claim came in, but they didn't process it or present it to my clients until the 18th of October 2017. So I want to clarify that this is not a year-old enforcement case on my client's behalf. The city just said that it fell between the cracks, and that's why it has a 2016 date on it. So I wanted to clarify that. They came to me and asked me to what their options were in dealing with this, and we got the MZE and the plans and the application in, within 2 weeks of having received that zoning notice, enforcement notice. So wanted to let you know that we were right onto this and we didn't delay in responding to this. And there were some, another zoning was a parkway, which they removed some palm trees and thin brush. There's a before and after photographs here that you can see. And Colin Isles has said that he is happy with this at this point. You can see all the thick here. You can see actually a van coming down the street at this point in time. So that's been resolved, and that brings us back to the hedge height. And like I said, there's a contentious relationship between these two neighbors. There's been a lot of privacy issues. There's been invasion of privacy. There's been trespassing. There's been a number of things that at this moment I will not go into, but if I need to, I will bring up those additional things. But needless to say, to keep part of this screen intact, it's pertinent to the Kuprikas' privacy and their comfort and quality of life. In addition, you might want to note that this hedge does not interfere with the view of the parcel back here, Paterna Road. Here's a photograph from their house. And also, prior to, the Kuprikas had a reasonable relationship with Mrs. Fenton, but she has since, they have split and she's no longer there, but she also informed my clients that there was no view issue with the hedge or their vegetation. So I'd like to present that as information in fact as well. And that's it, unless you have some questions for me at this point.
We'll have questions in a moment. That's all you present. Okay. This is a notice public hearing, so we've had several responses in writing. Is there anyone here in the audience that wishes to address the board? Yes, then you'll need to bring up a yellow slip, please. Just hand it to the staff. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Okay, my name is Granville Fenton. I live at 1741 Paterna Road, which is directly behind the property.
So if you could clarify for the board, do you live in that home up here?
Yes, that's the second story
Okay,
of
and
my
that's,
home.
on this photograph, that house is right there?
Yeah.
Your house is right here? This is Turner Road up here? This is the house question?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Is that on?
This is my driveway. This
So
is
you
my
access
garage.
it from APS
Mhm.
up to here. There's a little carport here with a car in it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's your property?
Yes.
And the hedge we're talking about is here, here, and here, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
I have some supporting document that will help you out as far as where the hedge is. And how it sits in relation to my property, which unfortunately
If you could talk into the mic.
You need to talk into the microphone. This is all being recorded. Thank you.
was a guest cottage to an adjoining property. That's how it came into existence. And it was built on the southern property line, which borders the Krupka's northern property line. So as exampled by this picture right here, that hedge literally sits 10 to 12 feet from the southern elevation of my house, which in 2004 I did an addition and I built a sunroom there to take advantage of what was previously a deck with views of the city, the ocean, and the islands, and which is now completely obstructed by a 14-foot wall of ficus. So my exception, my objection to this hedge is on a use and enjoyment of my property being negatively impacted. Okay, I have a prepared statement I'd like to read. This hedge was planted as an addition remodel that was completed at 1554 in 2004. It went in as 15-gallon planters with 6 to 8 foot high ficus plants. The house was purchased by Brian Sarvis, superintendent of Santa Barbara School District. In 2004, he lived there for 5 years before selling it to the current owners in 2009. Brian and I kept that hedge trimmed to a suitable height, between 8 to 10 feet, with the 10-foot portions being stepped down to the 8-foot portion at the northeast corner of his lot, where it is next to my home right here. So we tiered it in order not to impact my property, which unfortunately, my house, I can't move it. Okay, I tried to forge the same relationship with my new neighbors, invited them to my property to view the hedge from my perspective. They were dismissive, and Fred told me in no uncertain terms he didn't want to see my house from his property, and he wanted the hedge to be all the same height.
Okay, your 2 minutes is, if you could wrap up, please.
Okay. So I'm appealing to the review authority under this Title 30, 245060, that this proposal is detrimentally impacting the use and enjoyment of my property.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I submit this
Yes,
written statement?
You can hand that to the clerk, please, or to the staff. Thank you.
Because there's more to it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address? If you'll come forward, please. And I don't know where the yellow slips were, but if you could hand it to staff, please. Thank you. Introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes. You'll need to let him have that microphone. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, guys. My name is Mackenzie Combs. I'm representing Gary Keenan. He is a neighbor at 1548 Alameda Padre Sierra.
You're located what? Which is where?
1548. It's next door.
This way or that way?
It's next door to the property, that way.
This one?
This one. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
On his behalf, I would like to say we are concerned about the potential root damage to our existing site wall. The root systems of this plant, ficus, as we know, are invasive and could potentially damage hardscaping or new construction at 1548, which was just permitted a month ago. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else wishing to address this project in the audience? Okay, I have several letters. I'll go over them briefly. I think everyone on the board has had a chance to look at them. There is a letter from a Theodore Clute and Larry Flatska. Not sure where their address is, but essentially the way I read that letter is they're kind of okay with this applicant being allowed to do what they're requesting. I have a letter from a Shelley Booksband who is objecting to the allowance of the height of this hedge to go to 14 feet. In full disclosure, Shelley and I both are presidents of our respective neighborhood associations. She and I sit also on a board together, and both of us were also heavily involved with working with the city on the current hedge ordinance that's now in place. I have a letter from a Don and Sherry Binnenhoven. Not sure. Yes, they opposed the 14 feet. Not sure where they're at, where they live. I have an anonymous letter that was quite lengthy, but essentially the way I read that letter is they're opposed. And also we had a letter from Mr. Fenton, who spoke earlier. We also had a letter from the previous owner of the applicant's property, Brian Sarvis, who's the superintendent of schools. My wife worked for 40-some years, and my son currently works. And I think that was all of them. Did I miss any? Okay.
No, Mr. Chair.
All right. Is there any Further comments from the audience? And Katie, that was it, right?
That was it for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Then the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion. In our chat with Chief Zoning Officer, Mr. Cato, earlier in the evening, his direction to us is that this is a yes or no decision. This is not like most of our normal work where we would ask the applicant to make changes, et cetera, et cetera. It's either we accept the request to go to 14 feet or we don't. The request is appealable to the city council directly. A brief background, if you all know that the hedges on the Riviera, in one case in specific, is what caused our previous hedge ordinance to be put in abeyance for many years by the city council and was resurrected to a new ordinance a few years ago, which many people in the community were very active in participating in the current ordinance, which we now operate in, and that's why it's in front of us tonight. One of the questions I did ask Mr. Cato is that if we were uncomfortable of really understanding the consequences of what is being presented, that we could ask for a notified site visit to review all the properties involved as possible, so we can understand what we're looking at. But there may be some other comments or questions, but I'll leave it up to the board.
I have my comment too. In lieu of the fact that we've got story poles going for the other project, I didn't turn my mic on. In lieu that we're getting story poles for the other project, I'd like to visit this project.
Okay. Other comments?
Ordinance has changed due
Yes.
to this year, so that little thing between, that we used to have, that was an agreement between the property owners.
That still exists, but apparently we have a condition where the property owners can't agree, and so it's sitting in front of us.
If
So
I
now
could
we
just,
need to decide.
if I could just clarify, the consent form existed for the administrative exception for overheight fences and hedges under Title 28. Under Title 30, you now make the decision and that form no longer exists because we have a public hearing, which we didn't in the other case.
Got it. And another question, the hedge at one time didn't exist, it was planted, from what I've gathered of the verbal here, it was planted and grown up in the last few years.
That was prior to my clients purchasing the property, the hedge
Prior
was
to your
planted.
plans, okay. Yeah,
Yes, and just as a note, there is approximately an 18-inch
Excuse me.
differential in height.
The
Yeah, that's
discussion
right.
is to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
The hedge.
All right.
I didn't mean to look at you.
That's okay. That's all right.
Okay.
Can I
So
ask a
Lisa, your
question?
comment is you want to go see it?
I would like to go see it.
Okay. Did I hear that from?
I just wanted to ask a question. Where is this photo taken from? On the,
That's from their second floor.
Is that from this
through
window?
this window?
This window?
This is the Kuprikas 1554 APS. That's their kitchen window looking at the house. That photograph that I handed you with the young girl, that's his daughter looking out from their balcony on their second floor.
How did you get a photo from my daughter?
Off of Facebook, famous Facebook. There we go.
So that was taken from the second floor.
Okay, excuse me. This is going to get out of hand real fast. This is a public meeting. The discussion is to the board. If we have specific questions for the applicant or the visitor, we can ask them to come forward, but let's not have crosstalk, okay? Otherwise, we're going to get all mixed up.
I was just trying to understand the
Okay,
context
so
of the photograph.
Just to be sure, Mr. Fenton brought that up.
Brought this one.
Brought that one up. That's taken from his first floor, as I understand it.
Yes.
Looking down to this property. That photograph was presented by the applicant as a photograph supposedly taken from somewhere on the second floor.
Okay.
Looking out.
So there's a balcony on this property.
Well, there's something that they're looking at. So, but Lisa is saying she wants to go see the site. I went out yesterday.
Yes.
Looking, I couldn't figure out what was going on because of the configuration of where this house is and this house is and this house and this house, et cetera. It's too hard to figure out, and without this information in front of me, I wasn't able to ascertain what hedge we were even talking about. Now I understand that at least today, but I'm of the position I need to go out and look at this.
Yeah.
And my sense is we all need to go look at this. And we need, when we go look at it, I want to get some indication of what the measurement is. So I'm going to request that the applicant provide us with a story pole at each hedge point so we understand exactly where the height of that hedge is today. I know you indicated that it's like 13 feet or whatever. I want to see the actual measurement. So I want a pole with a little red flag at the top to show what the measurement is.
Okay.
And Mr. Fenton, if it's possible, we'd like to be able, as a board, it'll be a public noticed meeting, be able to get onto your property so that we can see what you're sharing with us in the photographs. Makes much more relevant to us, and we'll certainly want to be able to be onto this property to understand what we're seeing.
We
Okay?
can do that in conjunction with that other project.
Well, we'll leave it up to staff to schedule it because they've got to schedule with owners and people's schedules, et cetera. That's would be my recommendation, guys.
Go ahead, no problem, no comment.
Okay, so with that, I would encourage, or unless you'd like me, I'll make a motion to that effect. Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay, so the chair is going to make a motion that the board will re-adjourn to a time certain. Public notice is dealt with by the board, or by the staff.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify, it won't be a public notice, but it will be a note on the agenda that there will be a site visit for that item.
And so typically, just the mechanics of how this works, we'll do a site visit before a 3 o'clock board meeting, whenever it gets scheduled. We'll go look at the site, we'll return here, and then we'll discuss it at an agenda item, however it's organized by staff, at that meeting. So it may not be the first item, it may be somewhere down the line in the meeting somewhere, but typically what happens is we try to visit the site 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, get back here at 3, and then we'll go through our normal agenda. It will be agendized somewhere in that agenda somewhere. And that we would request that the applicant specifically provide us with a story pole with a colored flag at the top indicating the exact vertical feet at each major section of the hedges that are being requested to be either grown to or left at 14 feet. Okay? Right?
All right.
That's the motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Okay, there's a second to the motion. Any further discussion to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions, so carried. Okay, so if you'll work with staff, and Mr. Fenton, if you'll work with staff, please, so we can
Can I
schedule
also
that.
clarify something about the driveway?
Yes.
Just for you. This driveway is not his driveway. This is half of the Capricas property, and the other parcel, half of this property. This is actually a fire access.
Okay, but
He just never put a driveway through Paterna to his property, so this is private.
That's part of, not part of this discussion.
I'm just clarifying that
Okay.
driveway issue.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. Okay, where am I?
Someone pass me
Okay, let's go to 1913 Mission Ridge Road.
And if everyone can pass me back these blue and that set of plans down there. Just give me a moment so that the next item
Okay, well, things are getting set up. I'm going to read into the record. This is a new item, item number 8, 1913 Mission Ridge Road. This is a project description. Proposal for additions and alterations to an existing 2,148 square foot, two-story single residential unit with an attached 477 square foot two-car garage. The proposed project includes the addition of 56 square feet to the second floor and extending an existing 289 square foot balcony by 62 square feet. Other site improvements include an interior remodel of 400 square feet, new doors and windows, new wrought iron railing, and permitting an existing wood gate at the driveway. Proposed total of 2,681 square feet of development on a 9,118 square foot lot located in the Hillside Design District is 78% of the maximum allowable floor-to-lot area ratio. Any action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name's Adele Goja. I'm one of the project architects at Harrison Design. I was
You need to get closer to the microphone.
Apologize. I was here at the Single Family Design Board, but I was on the consent agenda about a year and a half ago representing the previous owner. And we were not scheduled to the full board because we were doing just some minor changes and enhancements to the exterior. We were not adding any square feet at that time. The triggers that brought us here to the full board are we are proposing to extend the deck, which is on the main level of the house, but as the property slopes further to the south, it is a second-story balcony. And we are proposing to do a small addition to the master bedroom to create a sitting area. So the sitting area that we're creating is the 56 square feet at the second floor. And the deck extension of 62 square feet allows us to set a dining room table or a larger seating arrangement, but that deck extension is underneath the existing roof overhang. Other improvements or enhancements that we're making to the property is there was a considerable amount of effort put for the curb appeal to the house, and we're continuing with the same style, detail, and color of windows and doors to the east, west, and south elevation, replacing wood railing with wrought iron railing. All the colors and details and materials will match the existing.
Okay, anything else? I do have one question, just based on the description. There is permitting an existing wood gate at the driveway.
So that showed up at the zoning information report. There's existing wood gates here, and I have a photograph of what those are. They had not been approved by transportation. They were installed after final inspection of the work that was done, part of the remodel.
So that's part of this application?
That is also part of that application.
So it's the
Yes,
wood
there's
gates.
details of the gate, the height, and the gate elevations look like this.
It's that gate and that gate.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else? That's it?
If there's interior remodeling, changes of doors and windows of the exterior elevations of the home.
Right here? Right
These
there.
are new doors and windows. These are new wrought iron railing, which is replacing wood. We have demo sheets if you want to compare what those are. Replacing windows with the same style windows that appear on the north elevation of the house.
That's a new window here?
Yes.
That's a shutter? No.
No, that's removing an old window.
Oh,
It might
okay,
be
so
for-
that's just the fill-in, okay,
That's
gotcha.
correct.
Thank you. All right. Okay, nothing else to present. Chair will open up for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board may come forward. Katie, did we receive any written?
No, Mr. Chair, we did not.
Seeing no one come, okay, seeing no one come forward, Chair will close public comment, bring it back to the board for questions. Katie, did you have additional information?
I was just going to say that I have routed the plans to transportation, and she said she'll try and get that reviewed tomorrow.
Okay, and so that's with regards to this gate?
To the gate, that's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. All right. All right, who has questions?
There's two gates?
Well, two
Or-
leaves, one gate, right?
What did
One
I
gate,
see?
They both open.
What
Opens in
am
the
I
center.
seeing? That's the same gate.
It is the gate, it is the same gate. This is one elevation of the gate. There's hardware, exposed hardware on the exterior, so we just show both sides.
Oh, you just said both sides, okay. I'm looking at two gates.
Not two gates, one gate.
One gate, two
Set of
sides.
gates, two sides.
Two sides, okay.
Two leaves. Okay, other questions, Lisa?
Okay, I apologize. I thought we had seen this before. I was right, we saw it before. I thought I'd looked at it. I didn't look at it, and I didn't see it yesterday.
I understand.
I looked at everything else, but I didn't.
He showed up the same time he showed up. Only his car wasn't working, mine was. All right.
Do I believe you were on the You were on the.
I think I
consent
was. I
agenda
thought
when we brought the original house.
Okay. Who has other
Okay,
questions?
hold a minute, take that back. No, hold a minute, I'm standing right in front of it. Let me look at it. Let me
so
look.
I had
Yes,
to-
I'm looking at it, yeah.
This was
But
the
I'm looking at
existing
downhill,
elevation.
I'm looking at, okay.
We haven't made any changes to the existing.
Right,
This is a
okay.
lot of the work that was done about a year ago. And the current owner now wants to move forward with the east, west, and south elevation,
okay.
following the same vocabulary that was established on the north.
God, now I know where I am.
You're just replacing the railing here, right? Sorry, I
That's correct.
stepped out of the room, so.
Replacing the wood railing, and we're also doing a minor extension. It's extending the balcony by 62 square feet.
Oh, it's sticking out. I see,
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Okay, now.
So it's basically there out?
Just a
Just that.
small portion. It's just enough to get a seating arrangement
To work.
outside of the movement of the doors.
Any other questions or comments? I would say if we're supportive of this project, and I was just looking at the set of drawings, and if the applicant is agreeable, a lot of the details, I guess, aren't here.
Door and window details.
Have you got door and window?
Wrought iron details.
What I was going to suggest, we could, if we wanted to, give it project design approval and give it final approval, that's what I was looking for, okay, for the details. So, comments?
Mr. Chair, if we
Yes.
do, we would need to add some sort of condition that the gate would need to be supported by transportation.
Correct. Thank you. Okay. Comments?
I can support it.
I can support it.
I can support it.
Okay.
I think it looks good to me.
Then the chair would look for a motion for approval. You'd want to determine whether you want to give it project design approval and final approval, subject to the approval of transportation for the gate on the westerly side of the property.
I'll make a proposal. I would like to give it design approval and final approval with conditions of transportation on approval of the gate.
Thank you.
And the board is, I forgot how many, yeah.
So you just need
I'll
to
just
read
go
the-
into the NPR findings, NPR, that it's consistent with appearance and compatibility with the neighborhood. You haven't changed the front. It looks like the front, looks like a car belongs in front of it. And its quality of architecture materials is consistent with our NPR, safety and welfare, good neighbor guidelines. Have you talked with your neighbors, or have they screamed at you? Okay, that's my motion. And appealable to 10 days.
I get to do that.
You get to do that? Oh, yeah. I'll let
You don't have to make that part of the
I'll let you
motion.
do that, right?
Okay. All right, that's the motion. Do I have a second?
Can we repeat the motion, please? There was a little bit of confusion.
There's a project design approval and final approval with the comments that transportation is to approve the gate and the MPO.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there further discussion to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I second it.
Sorry. Abstentions? So carried. Okay, you're done.
Thank you.
Okay,
Have a wonderful evening.
this does in fact have a 10-day appeal period.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I forgot that was the house.
The chair will, no further business before today's meeting. The chair will adjourn.